She wore a borrowed dress to a charity auction and caught the eye of a millionaire, the worst luck of her life disguised as a fairy tale. Natalie Hartley didn't belong at the Crystal Ballroom that Saturday night in October. At 23, she was a veterinary assistant making $32,000 a year, living in a studio apartment in East Atlanta where the rent ate half her paycheck. The only reason she stood in that room full of Atlanta's elite was because the animal shelter where she volunteered needed staff for their annual fundraiser. The ballroom glowed with crystal chandeliers and champagne bubbles, a world she observed from the edges where volunteer staff belonged. Women in designer gowns that cost more than Natalie's car circulated with practiced smiles. Men in custom tuxedos discussed vacation homes and stock portfolios. Natalie wore a borrowed black dress from her roommate. Simple, appropriate, invisible. She preferred invisible. Her entire life had been built on staying invisible. Growing up in Charleston under her mother's maiden name, Natalie had learned early that anonymity was survival. Her father called every Sunday at exactly 3 p.m. He visited twice a year, always in disguise, different wigs, fake beards, colored contacts. To her teachers, her friends, everyone in her world, she was just Natalie Hartley. No father, no family money, nothing remarkable. She couldn't tell anyone the truth. Not her best friend in high school, not her college roommate. Nobody. Her father was Richard Preston, founder and CEO of Preston Pharmaceuticals, worth $18 billion. And Natalie was his secret. The reason was simple and terrible. When Natalie was 2 years old, her father's first wife and 8-year-old son were kidnapped. The ransom was paid. They were murdered anyway. Richard Preston had lost half his family in 1 week, and the trauma had changed him forever. He decided his surviving daughter would live hidden, protected, anonymous. So Natalie grew up lonely, unable to form real connections because every relationship was built on lies. She couldn't risk getting close to anyone, couldn't risk anyone digging into her background, couldn't risk the truth coming out. By 23, she'd perfected the art of surface-level friendships and keeping people at arm's length. Then Derek Monroe crossed the ballroom toward her, and everything changed. He moved through the crowd like he owned the space, confident, polished, magnetic. His tuxedo fit perfectly across broad shoulders. Dark hair styled just messy enough to look effortless. A smile that had been practiced in mirrors until it appeared natural. Natalie was refilling champagne glasses on a corner table when she felt his presence behind her. "You're the first woman here tonight who looks like she'd rather be anywhere else." His voice was smooth, amused. Natalie turned and found herself looking up at a man who belonged in cologne commercials. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that crinkled at the corners. The kind of handsome that knew it was handsome. "I'm working," she said simply, gesturing at her volunteer badge. "Even better. That means you're genuine." He extended his hand. "Derek Monroe." She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was warm, firm. "Natalie? Just Natalie?" "Hartley. Natalie Hartley." "Well, Natalie Hartley, would you take a break and show me where they're hiding the decent wine? Everything out here tastes like expensive vinegar." She should have said no. Should have remembered her place, her role, the walls she'd built around herself for 23 years. Instead, she laughed. "I'm supposed to be serving, not drinking." "Then let me make a substantial donation to the shelter, and you can take 15 minutes off." Derek pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then showed her the confirmation. $5,000 transferred to the Atlanta Animal Rescue Fund. Natalie's eyes widened. "You didn't have to." "I know, but now you have time for one conversation." "Come on." He guided her toward the balcony with his hand on her lower back, a touch that was somehow both casual and possessive. Natalie felt heat bloom through the thin fabric of her borrowed dress. When was the last time someone had touched her like that? Like she was worth noticing? The October air outside was cool, relief after the crowded warmth of the ballroom. City lights spread out below them, Atlanta glittering in the darkness. "So, Derek leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and cedar-scented. Tell me about Natalie Hartley, who volunteers at animal shelters and looks uncomfortable around champagne. Not much to tell. I work at a veterinary clinic. I like dogs more than people. This is my first event like this. First and last? Probably. Why? You fit in just fine. Natalie laughed bitterly. No, I don't. Look at me. This dress is borrowed. My shoes are from Target. I make in a year what most people here spend on a watch. Derek studied her face with an intensity that made her skin warm. His gaze traveled from her eyes to her mouth and lingered there. You don't belong in the shadows, he said, his thumb tracing the inside of her wrist, where he still held her hand from guiding her outside. Someone like you should be standing in the light. The words should have sounded like a line. Maybe they were a line. But the way he looked at her, like she was the only person at the entire event who mattered, made Natalie's breath catch. I don't even know you, she said softly. Then let me fix that. Dinner, tomorrow night. Somewhere without champagne or borrowed dresses. Just you and me. Don't think, just say yes. Natalie knew she should refuse, should maintain her boundaries, her careful distance from anyone who might get too close. But she was so tired of being alone, so exhausted by the weight of secrets she carried. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Derek's smile transformed his entire face. He pulled out his phone. Give me your number. She did. He typed something, then pocketed his phone. 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up from wherever you want. The clinic, Atlanta East Veterinary, on Moreland Avenue. Perfect. Derek leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. I'm already looking forward to it. When he walked back inside, Natalie stayed on the balcony, heart racing. She pressed her hands against the cool railing and tried to calm the flutter of anticipation and warning warring in her chest. She didn't know Derek Monroe owned a chain of luxury car dealerships worth $40 million. Didn't know his wealth was built on loans he couldn't repay and deals with dangerous people. Didn't know he'd attended the auction specifically looking for connections. Wealthy daughters, women with family money, anyone who could solve his growing financial crisis. All she knew was that someone had looked at her like she mattered. That was enough to make her ignore every warning sign. Have you ever met someone who seemed too good to be true? That moment when charm feels intoxicating, but something whispers, "Be careful?" Tell me in the comments if you felt that pull. 3 weeks later, Derek sent a dozen white roses to the veterinary clinic with a card that read, "Dinner tonight. I won't take no for an answer." Natalie's coworker squealed with excitement. Who sends roses to a vet clinic? Girl, this man is serious. Natalie stared at the flowers. Perfect, expensive, overwhelming. Beautiful. She felt the first flutter of unease she chose to ignore. He pursued her like she was the only woman in Georgia. Expensive dinners, surprise gifts, declarations of devotion that swept her off her feet before she could think clearly. Derek Monroe courted Natalie like a man on a mission. That first dinner turned into 3 dinners a week. Fancy restaurants where the menus had no prices and waiters wore white gloves. He ordered wine that cost more than her weekly grocery budget and insisted she try oysters, truffle pasta, desserts that arrived on gold-rimmed plates. You should get used to nice things, Derek said during their second week of dating, watching her nervously pick at a dish that cost $70. You deserve them. Natalie didn't feel like she deserved anything. She felt like an imposter playing dress-up in someone else's life. But Derek made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. He texted her good morning every day, sent flowers to the clinic so often her coworkers started teasing her about her mystery millionaire, showed up after her shifts with coffee made exactly how she liked it. 2 creams, 1 sugar. How did you know? She asked the first time. I pay attention, he replied, kissing her forehead. That's what you do when someone matters. 6 weeks in, Derek took her to his penthouse in Buckhead for the first time. The elevator opened directly into his apartment, 3,000 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, furniture that looked like modern art. The view stretched across Atlanta, city lights spreading out like a constellation had fallen to earth. "This is where you live?" Natalie breathed, stepping inside slowly. "This is where we'll live," Derek corrected, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "If you'll let me convince you." They sat in his Bentley that night, parked on an overlook in the mountains north of the city. Classical music played softly through speakers that cost more than Natalie's monthly rent. Derek's hand moved to her thigh, possessive and warm. "Tell me about your family," he said, his thumb drawing slow circles that made her breath hitch. Natalie's stomach tightened. "There's not much to tell. Parents, siblings, just me and my mom. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer." This was the story she'd practiced her entire life. Her mother had died when Natalie was 21. That part was true. The rest was carefully constructed fiction. "No father?" "He left when I was a baby. I never knew him." Derek's hand stilled on her thigh. "No family money? Inheritance? Trust fund?" The questions felt pointed, invasive. Natalie shifted uncomfortably. "No, just me, working at the clinic, paying off student loans." Something flickered across Derek's face. Disappointment? Frustration? But then he smiled and pulled her closer. "Then I'll take care of you. You shouldn't have to struggle." He kissed her before she could respond, his mouth hungry and demanding. His hands moved under her shirt, rough with urgency. "Derek, I need you," he whispered against her neck. "Come back to the penthouse. Stay with me tonight." Natalie had kept herself guarded for so long. 23 years of walls, of distance, of never letting anyone too close. But Derek's touch made her feel alive in ways she hadn't known she was dead. "Okay," she breathed. The penthouse bedroom was all dark wood and silk sheets. Derek undressed her slowly beside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city watching as he lowered her onto the bed. "You're mine now," he whispered against her neck as he moved over her, his weight pressing her into expensive sheets that smelled like lavender and cedar. His touch was skilled, practiced. He knew exactly where to kiss, where to press, how to make her gasp. But there was something in his eyes, a calculation, an assessment, that Natalie was too overwhelmed to notice. She mistook possession for passion, control for commitment. Afterward, Derek held her against his chest, fingers trailing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Have you thought about moving in?" he asked casually, like the question was nothing. "We've only been dating 2 months." "I know, but why wait? You're paying rent on that tiny place in East Atlanta. You hate your roommate's boyfriend. You spend half your time here anyway." "Derek, I'm serious, Natalie. I want you here, with me, all the time." The intensity in his voice should have been a warning, should have made her pause, consider, question why he was rushing. Instead, it made her feel wanted. "Let me think about it," she said softly. Derek kissed her forehead. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." But over the next month, subtle pressure mounted. Derek complained when she went home to her apartment, questioned why she needed space, suggested her roommate was taking advantage of her financially. "You could save so much money living here," he'd say. "Invest in your future instead of throwing it away on rent." Natalie's father called every Sunday at 3 p.m., like clockwork. She'd step onto Derek's balcony for privacy, keeping her voice low. "How are you, sweetheart?" Richard Preston's voice always carried notes of worry and love. "I'm good, Dad. Work is fine. Everything's fine." "You sound different, distracted." "I'm just tired." "Natalie," her father's tone sharpened. "Is there something you're not telling me?" She wanted to tell him about Derek. Wanted to share this one good thing in her life of necessary isolation. But her father's rules had been absolute since childhood. Trust no one with the truth. Let no one get too close. Protect yourself by staying hidden. "Nothing, Dad. I promise." The lie tasted bitter. 3 months into their relationship, Derek started asking more pointed questions about her family, about connections, about whether she had relatives with money, distant cousins, anyone who might be useful to know. "Why does it matter?" Natalie finally asked one night over dinner at an expensive steakhouse. "It doesn't," Derek said quickly. Too quickly. "I'm just curious about you, wanting to know everything." But Natalie noticed how his jaw tensed when she said there was no family money, how his smile faded slightly when she mentioned paying off student loans, how his attention would drift during their conversations until she steered the topic back to his work, his deals, his success. She told herself she was being paranoid, that her father's lifetime of warnings had made her suspicious of everyone, that Derek genuinely cared about her. She ignored the voice whispering that something felt wrong. When did you realize someone's love was conditional? That the person you trusted was building a cage you couldn't see yet? Share your moment of clarity below. On their 4-month anniversary, Derek took her back to the same restaurant where they'd had their first date. The candles, the wine, the perfect lighting. He got down on one knee in front of the entire restaurant, pulled out a ring box, and opened it to reveal 3 carats of platinum and diamonds. "Natalie Hartley, you've changed my life. Marry me, make me the happiest man in Atlanta." The restaurant erupted in applause. Strangers clapped and cheered. A waiter appeared with champagne. Natalie looked at Derek's handsome face, at the expensive ring, at the fairy tale unfolding in front of her. She said yes before noticing his smile didn't reach his eyes. Later, she'd remember that moment as the point of no return. The ring sparkled. Perfect. Expensive. She'd just agreed to marry a man she barely knew, and she couldn't tell her father until it was too late. They married in a small savannah ceremony with a view of the river. Beautiful, intimate, and built entirely on lies neither of them was telling. The wedding happened fast. Too fast. 6 weeks after Derek proposed, Natalie stood in a bridal suite overlooking the Savannah River, adjusting a simple white dress she'd bought off the rack for $800. "It's perfect," her friend from the vet clinic said, helping with the zipper. "You look beautiful." "It's appropriate for my budget," Derek had commented when she showed him the dress. The words had an edge that made Natalie flinch. It was the first time his criticism had been direct rather than veiled. Derek had wanted a big wedding. 300 guests, country club venue, expensive everything. But Natalie had pushed back, using money as her excuse when the real reason was simpler. A big wedding meant more scrutiny, more questions, more risk of someone discovering who she really was. "I want something small and intimate," she'd insisted. "Just us and the people we love most." Derek had agreed, but his frustration was clear in how his jaw tensed, how his voice went flat. The historic venue they'd chosen overlooked water that caught sunset in shades of amber and gold. 30 guests, Derek's business associates, a few friends from the dealerships, Natalie's co-workers from the clinic, and one man Natalie introduced as Uncle Robert. Richard Preston stood near the back, barely recognizable. Gray wig, fake beard, brown contacts instead of his distinctive steel blue eyes. A rumpled suit that made him look like a retired insurance salesman instead of an $18 billion CEO. He'd flown into Savannah that morning on a commercial flight, something he never did, and taken a taxi to the venue instead of his usual private car and security detail, all to watch his daughter marry a man he hadn't been allowed to vet, hadn't been allowed to investigate, hadn't been allowed to protect her from. Before the ceremony, Richard pulled Natalie aside into a small room near the entrance. "It's not too late," he said quietly, his disguised appearance making the words feel even more desperate. "You can change your mind. We can leave right now. Dad, I haven't done a background check, haven't investigated his finances or his history. You won't let me. But sweetheart, something feels wrong." "You always think something feels wrong," Natalie said, frustration bleeding into her voice. "You've raised me to suspect everyone, trust no one, hide forever. Maybe Derek is exactly what he seems, a good man who loves me. Then why won't you tell him the truth about me? The question hung between them, sharp and painful. Because you forbade it, Natalie whispered. You made me promise never to tell anyone. To keep your secret until you said it was safe. If he loves you for you, he doesn't need to know about the money. Let him prove himself first. Give it time. I don't have time, Dad. I'm getting married in 20 minutes. Richard's face, even disguised, showed every ounce of his worry. At least promise me you'll be careful, that you'll call me if anything feels wrong. Anything. I promise. He hugged her, the fake beard scratchy against her cheek. I love you, sweetheart, more than anything. I love you too, Dad. The ceremony was beautiful. The officiant spoke about love and commitment. Derek's vows were smooth, practiced, words about partnership and future, and building a life together that sounded perfect but felt hollow. When Natalie said, I do, she saw Derek's expression shift. Satisfaction, possession, victory, not joy, not love. Victory. The reception was short, dinner and dancing by the river. Derek kept his hand on Natalie's waist the entire time, his grip tight enough to leave marks. You're mine now, he whispered against her ear during their first dance. Legally, officially mine. Something about the words made Natalie's stomach clench, but she pushed the feeling away. Wedding jitters, nerves, nothing more. Richard left early, slipping away before dinner ended. He hugged Natalie once more, his eyes behind the brown contacts filled with worry. Remember your promise, he murmured. Call me if you need me. I will. She watched Uncle Robert disappear into the Savannah evening and felt suddenly, terrifyingly, alone. The hotel suite Derek had booked was expensive, overlooking the river, all cream silk and soft lighting. Natalie changed into the white lingerie her friend had insisted she buy, feeling exposed and uncertain. Derek was already in the room when she came out of the bathroom. He'd loosened his tie, poured himself whiskey, and stood at the windows looking out at the water. Come here, he said without turning around. Natalie walked to him slowly. He pulled her against his chest, hands immediately possessive on her body. My wife, he said, the words sounding like ownership rather than affection. He turned her around and kissed her, hard, demanding, nothing like the gentle touches from their early dates. His hands pushed the lingerie straps off her shoulders roughly. Derek, slow down. Why? You're my wife now. He pushed her against the hotel room door before it had fully closed behind them, hands demanding rather than asking. His fingers dug into her hips, hard enough to bruise. My wife now, he growled, and something in his tone made her tense. The sex was different than before, rougher, faster, selfish. Derek took what he wanted without asking what she needed. When Natalie tried to slow him down, suggest a different position, ask for more foreplay, he ignored her. Afterward, he fell asleep immediately while Natalie lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling a bruise forming on her hip where his grip had been too tight. She convinced herself she was overthinking everything. That marriage was an adjustment, that the roughness was passion, not warning. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted the moment she'd said, I do. Did you ever ignore warning signs because you wanted so badly to believe in someone? When did small red flags become impossible to unsee? Tell me your experience. The honeymoon in the Bahamas should have been perfect. White sand beaches, turquoise water, resort luxury that cost more per night than Natalie made in a week. But Derek was distracted, constantly on his phone, making calls in rapid Spanish to people he wouldn't identify. His temper flared when the Wi-Fi was slow, when service wasn't immediate, when Natalie asked too many questions. 3 days into the trip, Natalie woke at 2 a.m. to find Derek's side of the bed empty. She found him on the suite balcony, pacing, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and angry. She stood frozen outside the sliding glass door, hidden in darkness, and listened. I told you I'd have it handled. I married her, didn't I? There has to be family money somewhere. I just need more time to find it. Natalie's blood turned to ice. No, she claims there's nothing. No father, no relatives, no trust fund. But nobody is that broke and that— Derek paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. Look, I'm working on it. Give me another month. If there's money, I'll find it. If not, we'll figure something else out. Natalie stepped back into the room silently, her heart pounding so hard she thought Derek might hear it through the glass. She crawled back into bed, lay perfectly still, and stared at the ceiling while her new husband conducted business on the balcony. The truth settled over her like freezing water. Derek hadn't married her for love. He'd married her looking for money. Money she didn't have. Money only her father had. Money Derek would never find, because he didn't know Richard Preston existed. When Derek came back to bed an hour later, Natalie pretended to be asleep. His arm came around her waist, pulling her against his chest possessively. "Mine," he murmured into her hair. Natalie kept her eyes closed and tried not to cry. She stood frozen outside their suite, hand on the doorknob, realizing he'd never asked about her job, her dreams, her life, only about her family. She'd married a predator, and she couldn't call her father to admit she'd made a terrible mistake. Not yet. Not until she had proof of what Derek really wanted. But the proof was coming, faster than she could have imagined. The honeymoon ended, and so did the pretense. In his penthouse, without witnesses, Derek's charm dissolved like sugar in acid. Natalie moved into Derek's Buckhead penthouse 2 days after returning from the Bahamas. She'd given up her apartment, quit sharing space with her roommate, packed her entire life into boxes that looked pathetic next to Derek's expensive furniture. Everything she owned fit in the guest bedroom closet. The penthouse that once felt glamorous now felt like a glass cage. Beautiful, expensive, and impossible to escape without everyone watching you shatter. She stood at the windows overlooking Buckhead, watching traffic move through the streets below, wondering when luxury started feeling like a prison. Derek's mood swings started almost immediately. He'd be charming over breakfast, then cold by lunch, affectionate one moment, distant the next. His phone rang constantly, calls he took in his office with the door closed, conversations in Spanish or hushed English that stopped the moment Natalie approached. Bills started arriving, red-stamped envelopes that Derek snatched from the mail before Natalie could see them, notices from banks, collection agencies, law offices. "Is everything okay?" Natalie asked one evening, after Derek had been holed up in his office for 3 hours, the sound of him cursing in Spanish drifting through the door. "Fine," he snapped. "Why are you bothering me?" "I just thought—" "Don't think. Go watch TV or something. I'm busy." The dismissal stung more than any slap could have. Natalie started noticing other things. Derek monitoring her phone, asking who she was texting, questions about her schedule at the clinic, irritation when she made plans with coworkers. "Why do you need friends?" he asked one night, when she mentioned getting drinks with her friend from work. "You have me." "I can't only have you, Derek." "Why not? I've given you everything. This penthouse, this life, security. What more do you need?" "Connection, people, a life outside these walls." His jaw clenched. "Cancel the drinks." "No." The word hung between them. Natalie had never said no to him before. Never pushed back, never challenged. Derek's face went cold. "Excuse me? I'm going out with my friend. I'll be back by 10. She thought he might argue. Instead, he smiled, sharp and empty. "Fine, go, but don't expect me to wait up." That night, when Natalie returned at 9:45 p.m., she found Derek in bed with his back to her, pretending to be asleep. When she tried to kiss him goodnight, he pulled away. The silent treatment lasted 3 days. 3 days of Derek ignoring her completely, walking past her like she was furniture, refusing to acknowledge her presence unless absolutely necessary. On day 4, he acted like nothing had happened, smiling over coffee, asking about her day, pulling her into bed with wandering hands. "I'm sorry I was cold," he said, kissing her neck. Work has been stressful. I shouldn't take it out on you. Natalie wanted to believe him, wanted to think the silent treatment had been a one-time thing, stress-related, fixable. But when Derek's hands moved over her body that night, his touch felt like transaction rather than affection. He criticized her responses. "You're too quiet. You're not into this. What's wrong with you?" When did affection become obligation? When did your partner's touch start feeling like control instead of comfort? Have you experienced that shift? Comment below. The pregnancy test was an accident. Natalie had been feeling sick for a week, nausea in the mornings, exhaustion that made getting through shifts at the clinic nearly impossible. Her coworker suggested pregnancy, and Natalie had laughed it off. "I'm on birth control. Nothing's perfect. Take a test just to rule it out." So she did. In the bathroom of the veterinary clinic during her lunch break, hands shaking as she waited 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Natalie sat on the bathroom floor, test clutched in shaking hands, trying to decide if she was terrified or hopeful. A baby. Derek's baby. Maybe this would fix things. Maybe becoming parents would bring back the man she'd fallen for at that charity auction. Maybe everything would be okay. She went home early, excitement and anxiety warring in her chest. Derek was in the living room, on his laptop, financial documents spread across the coffee table. He barely glanced up when she entered. "I need to tell you something," Natalie said, sitting beside him on the couch. "Can it wait? I'm in the middle of... I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air. Derek's fingers froze on the keyboard. Slowly, he turned to face her, his expression completely blank. "Say that again." "I'm pregnant. About 6 weeks, I think. I took a test today and... You're sure it's mine?" The question hit harder than any slap could have. Natalie stared at her husband, at the cold calculation in his eyes, at the complete absence of joy or surprise, or any normal human emotion. "What did you just say?" "You're sure it's mine?" Derek repeated, voice flat. "You work with a bunch of guys at that clinic. You're gone all day. How do I know?" "Get out!" Natalie's voice was ice. She stood up, shaking with rage so pure it burned through her fear. "Get the hell away from me!" Derek's expression shifted. Realization that he'd pushed too far, said something unforgivable. "Baby, I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did. Get out of this room, right now." He left. Natalie heard his office door slam a moment later. She sat alone in the living room, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, and felt the first real cracks in her fairy tale shatter into jagged pieces. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. Natalie sat on the bathroom floor, test clutched in shaking hands, trying to decide if she was terrified or hopeful. When she told Derek that night, expecting surprise or joy, his face went cold. "You're sure it's mine?" The question hit harder than any slap could have. But the actual slap was coming, sooner than she could imagine. 3 months pregnant, she broke his laptop by accident and discovered the monster living behind her husband's handsome face. Morning sickness at 12 weeks was brutal. Natalie couldn't keep anything down before noon. The smell of coffee made her gag. Raw meat at the clinic, her job, became impossible to handle without running to the bathroom every 20 minutes. She'd called in sick twice in 1 week, something she'd never done before. Derek's irritation was clear every time she vomited. Every time she asked him to open windows because smells overwhelmed her. Every time pregnancy disrupted his routine. "You're going to lose your job," he said one morning, watching her dry heave over the kitchen sink. "Then what? You think I can support both of us?" "You're a millionaire, Derek." His laugh was sharp and bitter. "Yeah, sure. That's what everyone thinks." That Tuesday morning, Natalie woke early, 6 a.m., feeling slightly better than usual. Derek was already at the gym, his usual 2-hour morning workout routine that left her alone in the penthouse. She decided to make breakfast. Real breakfast. Maybe if she tried harder, if she was the perfect wife, things would get better. The kitchen smelled like bacon and eggs when her phone rang. She reached for it on the counter, knocked Derek's laptop instead. and watched in horror as the expensive machine slid across marble and crashed to the floor. The screen shattered. Documents scattered. "No, no, no," Natalie breathed, dropping to her knees to gather everything. That's when she saw them. Financial statements spread across the floor. Collection notices, loan documents, legal threats. Derek Monroe owed $6 million to entities with addresses in Miami. 3 of his car dealerships were in foreclosure. His assets were frozen by creditors. His accounts overdrawn. The millionaire lifestyle was a house of cards built on borrowed money and lies. Natalie was still kneeling on the floor, documents in her hands, when she heard the penthouse door open. Derek's footsteps, coming closer. She scrambled to gather everything, but it was too late. He stood in the kitchen doorway, gym bag over his shoulder, sweat still on his face, staring at his broken laptop and the financial documents in Natalie's hands. "What the hell did you do?" His voice was low, dangerous. "I'm so sorry. I knocked it off the counter by accident. I didn't mean—" "You went through my files." "No! The laptop fell and these scattered everywhere, and I was just picking them up." "Liar!" The word came out like a gunshot. Derek dropped his gym bag, crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, grabbed the documents from Natalie's hands so hard the paper cut her palm. "You had no right to look at these. No right to touch my things." "Derek, I didn't read anything. I swear." "I said you're a liar." The laptop fell in slow motion. Expensive machinery meeting marble floor with a crack that echoed through the penthouse. Natalie reached for it, apologies already forming, when Derek's hand connected with her face so hard, her ears rang and the world tilted sideways. She hit the floor, pain exploding through her cheek, tasted blood, heard ringing. "You stupid!" Derek grabbed her arm, hauled her to her feet, and shoved her backward. Natalie stumbled. Her hip hit the glass coffee table. The table shattered under her weight. Glass everywhere, in her hair, on her clothes, cutting her hands where she tried to catch herself. "I married you thinking you had money, connections, something," Derek screamed, standing over her. "But you're nobody, just a broke little girl playing dress-up in my world." Natalie crawled across the glass-covered floor, tasting blood, her only thought protecting her stomach, protecting the baby, 3 months pregnant, bleeding, glass everywhere. "I gave you everything," Derek continued, pacing like a caged animal. "This penthouse, this life, security, and you can't even be useful, can't bring connections, can't access family money, can't do anything except work at a goddamn vet clinic making nothing." His foot came down near her hand. Natalie flinched, curling into herself. "Derek, please. The baby. The baby." He laughed, wild and unhinged. "You think a baby fixes anything? You think I want to be tied to you forever? You're worthless, Natalie, completely worthless." She needed to get up, needed to get away, needed to get to her phone. Her purse was on the couch, 5 feet away. Might as well have been 5 miles. Derek stormed to his office, still raging. The moment his door slammed, Natalie lunged for her purse. Glass cut her knees, blood smeared on marble. She didn't care. Her phone was in her shaking hands. She dialed the number she'd memorized at age 12. The emergency number her father had made her promise to only use if her life was in danger. It rang once. "Natalie?" Her father's voice cut through like a blade, instantly alert. "Did he hurt you?" She whispered one word through split lips and tears and breaking. "Yes." The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath before an earthquake. "I'm coming," Richard Preston said, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it. "Don't move. Don't talk to him. Lock yourself in a room. I'm sending help right now, and I'll be there in 4 hours." "Dad? Did he touch your stomach? The baby?" "I don't know. There's glass everywhere. I'm bleeding." "Lock yourself in the bathroom. Right now. Stay on the phone with me." Natalie crawled to the guest bathroom, leaving a trail of blood on expensive marble. Locked the door. Collapsed against it. Phone pressed to her ear. Listening to her father make call after call, mobilizing resources, summoning security, chartering jets. Through the door, she heard Derek still raging in his office, destroying things, screaming in Spanish. How many of you have experienced the shock of someone's first act of violence? That moment when you realize you never really knew them at all? You're not alone. Share your strength in the comments. 4 hours and 17 minutes later, Richard Preston walked into Derek Monroe's penthouse like he owned not just the room, but the air inside it, and Derek Monroe's life ended in every way that mattered. The lesson was about to begin. She made one phone call and set in motion a sequence of events that would teach a millionaire what real power looked like. Natalie stayed locked in the guest bathroom for 4 hours and 17 minutes, phone pressed to her ear, listening to her father coordinate what sounded like a military operation. Richard Preston made 17 phone calls while his daughter bled on a bathroom floor in Atlanta. Each call was brief, efficient, terrifying in its precision. I need the jet fueled and ready in 15 minutes. File a flight plan to Atlanta. Pull everything you have on Derek Monroe. Everything. Financial records, associates, business dealings, criminal connections. I want it on my desk before I land. Assemble a security team, 6 men, armed. Have them meet me at the Buckhead address I'm sending you. Through the bathroom door, Natalie could hear Derek still destroying his office. Glass breaking, furniture hitting walls, his voice raw from screaming. Take pictures of your injuries, Richard said, his voice suddenly gentle despite the steel underneath. Every bruise, every cut, every mark. Document everything with timestamps. Can you do that, sweetheart? Natalie's hands shook as she positioned her phone camera. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a stranger. Split lip, swelling cheek, blood in her hair, cuts on her hands from the glass. She took photos, dozens of them, close-ups of the bruises forming on her arms where Derek had grabbed her, the cuts on her palms, the scrapes on her knees. Good girl, Richard murmured. Now listen carefully. Do not open that door for him. Do not engage with him. If he tries to break down the door, you call 911 immediately. Do you understand? Yes. I'm boarding the jet now. I'll be there in less than 4 hours. Can you hold on that long? Dad, he's going to find out about you, about us, about everything. I know. Richard's voice was ice, and he's going to regret every second of the last 3 months, but especially today. No one touches my daughter. No one. The line stayed open. Natalie sat on the bathroom floor, back against the locked door, and listened to her father breathe 3,000 miles away. Around hour 2, Derek knocked on the bathroom door. Baby, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. Come out and let's talk about this. Natalie said nothing. Natalie, I know you're upset, but you knocked over my laptop. You went through my private files. You can't just... Go away, Derek. This is my house, my bathroom. You don't get to lock yourself in here and... I said go away. His fist hit the door hard enough to make it rattle in the frame. Natalie flinched, but didn't move. You're being dramatic. It was one fight. Every couple fights. Stop acting like I'm some kind of monster. One fight. As if screaming at her, slapping her, pushing her into a glass table while she was pregnant was just one fight. Natalie pulled up her phone and dialed 911, keeping the call ready to send with one touch. Derek must have heard movement because his voice changed, softer, manipulative, the tone he used when he wanted something. Come on, baby, let me make it up to you. We can go to dinner, I'll take you shopping, buy you something nice. That dress you wanted last week, remember? We'll get it. We'll get whatever you want. Buying her compliance, buying her silence, buying her forgiveness with gifts and promises like he'd bought her attention at that charity auction. I'm 3 months pregnant with cuts all over my hands, and you want to take me shopping? I didn't mean for you to get hurt. You pushed me into a glass table. You were being hysterical. Get away from the door, Derek, right now. Silence, then his footsteps retreating. Natalie exhaled slowly, heart still racing. Around hour 3, Derek tried a different approach. He knocked softly, his voice thick with tears that might have been real or perfectly faked. I need help, Natalie. I'm in trouble. Bad trouble. Those people in Miami, if I don't come up with the money, they're going to kill me. I married you because I thought you could help me. I know that's terrible. I know that makes me a bad person. But I'm desperate. The confession should have made her feel vindicated. Instead, it just made her sad. She'd married a predator who was also prey. A man being hunted who'd tried to use her as a shield without her knowledge or consent. I can't help you, Natalie said through the door. I told you, I don't have any money, no family connections, nothing you need. Then we're both dead, Derek said flatly. Because when they come for me, they'll take you too. You're my wife, you're leverage. The threat hung in the air between them. Before Natalie could respond, she heard new sounds from the living room. The penthouse door opening, multiple footsteps, deep voices speaking in low, commanding tones. Who the hell are you? Derek's voice sharp with panic. How did you get in here? Security for the building. We received a domestic disturbance call from this unit. That wasn't true. These weren't building security. Natalie knew it instantly. These were her father's men, arriving early, lying to gain access. There's no disturbance. My wife and I had an argument. She's being dramatic. Where is she? In the bathroom. Look, this is none of your business. Make it our business. Open the bathroom door, or we will. Natalie heard scuffling, Derek shouting, more footsteps, a knock on the bathroom door, calm, professional. Ma'am, my name is Marcus Chen. I'm head of security for Richard Preston. Your father sent us. Can you open the door? Natalie's hands shook as she unlocked it. The man standing there was exactly what she expected from her father's security team. Tall, broad-shouldered, alert eyes that cataloged everything instantly. Dark hair, strong jaw, a face that looked like it had seen things and survived them. Behind him, 3 more men in dark suits held Derek against the wall. Her husband looked small suddenly, powerless, his face pale with confusion and rising fear. Marcus's gaze swept over Natalie, taking in her injuries, the blood, the defensive posture, and his expression went cold. Medical is on the way, he said quietly. Is the baby okay? Any cramping or bleeding? I don't know. Maybe. There was so much glass. We'll get you checked out. Right now, I need you to stay here while we secure the scene. But Natalie couldn't stay hidden anymore. She walked out of the bathroom, past Marcus, into the living room where Derek was being held. Her husband's eyes widened when he saw her fully, the extent of her injuries, the blood, the evidence of what he'd done. Baby, I'm sorry. Don't call me that. I lost my temper. It won't happen again, I swear. You're right, it won't happen again. Derek's face shifted through emotions like he was trying on masks. Remorse, fear, anger, desperation, finally landing on manipulation. Come here, he said, his voice dropping to that intimate tone he used in bed. Let me hold you. Let me take care of you. The sexual manipulation was so blatant it made Natalie's stomach turn. He thought he could seduce his way out of this, thought his hands on her body would make her forget the violence those same hands had just inflicted. No. The word was simple, final, powerful. Derek's mask cracked. You're my wife. You're supposed to forgive me. That's what marriage means. Marriage doesn't mean you get to hit me. I didn't hit you. You fell. Stop lying. The penthouse door opened again. This time, everyone in the room felt the shift in atmosphere. Richard Preston walked into the penthouse at 2 a.m. like he owned not just the room, but the air inside it. Gray hair perfectly styled despite the emergency flight. Steel blue eyes that could freeze blood. A custom suit that whispered power with every line. The kind of presence that made expensive furniture look cheap and successful men look small. Natalie had seen her father in disguise her entire life. Wigs and fake beards and colored contacts designed to make him unremarkable. This was Richard Preston without disguise, without apology, without mercy. This was $18 billion walking into a room where a millionaire had just beaten his daughter. Derek's face went white. He didn't recognize Richard, Not immediately. Just saw an older man in an expensive suit, someone clearly important, someone Marcus and the security team immediately deferred to. Richard crossed the room to Natalie, touched her face gently, examining her injuries with a surgeon's careful attention. His jaw clenched when he saw the split lip. His eyes went colder when he noticed the cuts on her hands. "Did he touch your stomach?" Richard asked softly. "I don't think so. I fell into the table. There was glass everywhere. We're taking you to the hospital, right now." "Dad?" "No arguments, sweetheart. You're pregnant and injured. You need to be examined by doctors." Derek's confusion was almost funny. "Dad? What the hell is—" Richard turned to face Derek Monroe for the first time. The look he gave Natalie's husband could have stripped paint. "Mr. Monroe, you and I need to have a conversation about consequences. But first, Natalie has something to tell you." Natalie met Derek's eyes, saw the confusion, the dawning horror, the moment he started connecting pieces. Rich, older man. Security team. The word dad. The money and power radiating from this stranger like heat. "Derek, meet my father, Richard Preston." She watched her husband's face as recognition hit. Richard Preston. Forbes covers. Pharmaceutical empire. $18 billion. The broke veterinary assistant he'd married was the secret daughter of one of America's richest men. Derek's legs gave out. He would have collapsed if the security team hadn't been holding him against the wall. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not. You said you had no family, no money. You said—" "I lied," Natalie said simply. "My father wanted me hidden. Protected. Safe from people who might hurt me for his money. Ironic, isn't it? You hurt me anyway, and you didn't even know what you'd married into." What does real power look like to you? Is it money? Control? Or is it knowing when to call for help and refusing to suffer in silence? Tell me your definition below. Richard stepped closer to Derek. Didn't touch him. Didn't need to. His presence alone was weapon enough. "You put your hands on my daughter. You made her bleed. You endangered my grandchild." Each word was measured, calm, more terrifying than any scream. "Do you have any idea what I'm going to do to you?" Derek's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "Nothing yet," Richard continued, almost pleasantly. "Right now, I'm taking Natalie to the hospital. I'm making sure she and the baby are safe. But after that? After I know my daughter is okay?" He smiled, cold, empty, promising. "After that, Mr. Monroe, you're going to learn what happens to men who hurt the people I love." Marcus appeared at Natalie's side. "Car's ready, sir. Mercy Hospital has a private wing prepared for Ms. Preston." Ms. Preston, not Mrs. Monroe. The name shift felt deliberate, powerful. Natalie started toward the door, then paused, looked back at Derek one more time. Her husband, she could barely think of him that way anymore, looked destroyed. Pale, shaking, understanding, finally catching up with reality. "I loved you," Natalie said quietly. "When we met, when you courted me, when I married you, I actually loved you. That was real, Derek, even if nothing else was." She walked out of the penthouse between her father and Marcus, leaving Derek Monroe standing in the ruins of his living room, surrounded by broken glass and broken illusions. In the elevator down, Richard pulled Natalie against his chest carefully, avoiding her injuries. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you about him. Should have let you investigate. Should have listened." "Shh. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I just need you safe." The hospital visit took 3 hours. Examination, ultrasound, blood tests, x-rays of her hands. The baby was fine. Heartbeat strong, no signs of distress. Natalie's injuries were superficial, cuts that needed cleaning and bandaging, bruises that would heal, no broken bones. The emotional damage would take longer. Dawn was breaking over Atlanta when Richard brought Natalie to his estate in Buckhead, 15 acres behind walls and gates. security team at every entrance, a fortress disguised as a beautiful home. "You'll stay here," Richard said, helping Natalie into a guest room that was bigger than her old apartment. "For as long as you need. Forever, if that's what you want." "What about Derek?" Richard's smile was sharp enough to cut. "What about him? What are you going to do?" "What he deserves." Richard kissed her forehead gently. "Get some rest, sweetheart. We'll talk more when you're ready." But before Richard could leave, Natalie caught his hand. "Dad? Thank you, for coming, for everything." "Always," Richard said simply. "You're my daughter. I'll always come when you call." He left. Natalie collapsed onto the bed, exhausted, aching, and for the first time in months, safe. She didn't know what her father had planned for Derek Monroe. She'd find out soon enough. Richard looked at his daughter's swollen face and split lip, then turned to Derek with a smile that held no warmth whatsoever. "Mr. Monroe, you and I need to have a conversation about consequences. But first, Natalie has something to tell you." She met Derek's eyes and watched confusion cross his face. "Derek, meet my father, Richard Preston. You might have seen him on Forbes covers." The moment the name registered, Derek's world ended. The moment Derek realized his broke wife was the secret daughter of a billionaire was the same moment he understood his life was over. Derek Monroe had gambled everything on marrying money. He'd maxed out credit lines buying the Bentley, the penthouse, the lifestyle that attracted women like Natalie. He'd borrowed from dangerous people in Miami to keep his failing dealerships afloat. He'd calculated every move, every charm, every lie. And he'd lost. Lost bigger than he could have imagined, because the woman he'd beaten, the wife he'd married thinking she was worthless, was worth more than everything he'd ever touched in his entire life. Richard Preston stood in the penthouse after returning from the hospital, studying Derek like a scientist examining bacteria. Natalie was safe now, resting at the estate under medical care, which meant Richard could focus on the man who'd hurt her. "Sit down, Mr. Monroe." It wasn't a request. Derek sat on his own couch, flanked by security guards, while the most powerful man in the pharmaceutical industry took the chair across from him. Dawn broke over Atlanta, light streaming through penthouse windows onto a scene of reckoning. Derek knelt on his own marble floor when Richard gestured downward, face pale, hands shaking, while the woman he'd beaten stood tall beside a father whose wealth could buy and sell Derek's entire existence 1,000 times over. "Please," Derek whispered. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who she was." "That's your defense?" Richard's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Somehow that made it more terrifying. "You beat my daughter, you endangered my grandchild, but it's okay because you didn't know she was rich." "No, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I can fix this. I can make it right." "How?" The question hung in the air. "I'll divorce her, quietly. No alimony, no demands. I'll disappear. She'll never have to see me again." "You'll divorce her?" Richard laughed, sharp, cutting. "Mr. Monroe, you don't seem to understand the situation. You don't get to make offers. You don't get to negotiate. You don't get anything except what I decide to give you." Derek's face crumbled. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what you've done, not just to Natalie, but to yourself." Richard pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then showed Derek the display. Financial records, bank statements, loan documents, everything Derek had hidden on his laptop, now in Richard Preston's hands. $6 million to Miami creditors, 3 dealerships in foreclosure, assets frozen by multiple banks, lawsuits from investors, a house of cards about to collapse. Richard pocketed his phone. "You married my daughter, hoping she'd be your financial salvation."
"I know.
Instead,
I know. And I'm
you
sorry.
beat her when she couldn't
You're
save
not
you.
sorry you hurt her.
I was desperate.
You're sorry you got
Desperation
caught.
doesn't
Sorry
excuse
the woman
violence.
you beat
Turned out to be valuable." Richard leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about Natalie. She volunteered at animal shelters. She worked at that clinic because she loved helping animals, not for money. She could have told you who she was at any time, could have accessed resources that would have solved your Miami problem in an afternoon, but she didn't, Because I taught her to protect herself, to hide from men exactly like you. Derek opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Here's what's going to happen, Richard continued calmly. I'm going to destroy you, not quickly, not mercifully, slowly, methodically, piece by piece. And you're going to watch it happen. Please. Your dealerships will lose financing within 48 hours. Every bank will pull out. Every investor will flee. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation into financial irregularities. Your Miami creditors will receive detailed evidence of your theft, along with payment of your debt, which puts a target on your back without the protection of being useful to them. Derek's face went white. You can't. I already have. Richard stood. In 1 week, you'll be broke. In 2 weeks, you'll be unemployable. In 3 weeks, you'll be desperate enough to consider things you never imagined. And through all of it, you'll know, this is happening because you hurt my daughter. I'll fight back. I'll go to the media. I'll tell them you're using your power to what? Protect my daughter from her abusive husband? Yes, please tell the media that story. Include pictures of her injuries. Detail how you slapped her, pushed her into a glass table while she was pregnant. Let's see how that plays for you. Derek looked around wildly, like searching for an escape that didn't exist. I'll tell them about Natalie, he said desperately, about how she lied to me, hid her identity, married me under false pretenses. Go ahead, Richard said calmly. Tell them my daughter wanted privacy, wanted to be loved for herself rather than her father's money, that she married a man who beat her when she couldn't financially rescue him from his own failures. Yes, Derek, that's an excellent plan. The sarcasm cut deeper than any threat. Richard walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Monroe? If you come within 500 feet of my daughter, if you contact her, if you so much as think about her too loudly, I will make what's coming look like mercy. Do we understand each other? Derek nodded mutely. Good. Richard left. Derek sat alone in his penthouse, surrounded by broken glass and financial ruin, and realized his life was over. 3 hours later, his phone started exploding with notifications. First National Bank, account frozen pending investigation. Harbor Capital, loan called, payment due immediately. Atlantic Investors, withdrawing all funding from Monroe Luxury Auto Group. On and on. Every financial institution he'd worked with, every investor, every line of credit. Gone. By noon, Derek's accountant called. What the hell did you do? Every bank is dropping you simultaneously. This isn't normal. Someone with serious power is targeting you. Derek hung up without answering. By evening, worse news arrived. His Miami creditors, the dangerous people he owed $6 million, received an anonymous payment of his full debt, along with detailed documentation showing Derek had been skimming money from their operations, hiding revenue, stealing from them for 2 years. The debt was paid, which should have been good news. Except now they knew he'd betrayed them, stolen from them, made them look foolish. Men like that didn't forget insults like that. Derek's phone rang, Miami number. He didn't answer. They left a voicemail in Spanish that Derek's limited vocabulary translated roughly to, "You're dead? We're coming for you." 1 week after Richard Preston walked into that penthouse, Derek Monroe lost everything. The dealerships, the assets, the lifestyle, the penthouse, seized by the bank. His car, repossessed. His clothes. He packed what he could carry into 2 suitcases before security escorted him out. He moved into a motel in Marietta, Georgia. $49 a night, walls thin enough to hear neighbors fighting, stains on the carpet that might have been blood. This was his life now, and through it all, he knew Natalie was watching. She was watching from her father's estate, safe behind walls and security, while Derek's world burned. Have you ever witnessed someone get exactly what they deserved? That moment when karma arrives perfectly timed? Share your justice stories below. The psychological satisfaction Natalie felt watching Derek's destruction was almost erotic in its intensity. She sat in her father's study, reviewing financial reports Marcus brought her daily, watching Derek's empire collapse in real time. Each notification of a lost asset, each frozen account, each investor fleeing, sent a thrill through her that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with reclaimed power. For months, Derek had made her feel small, worthless, powerless. Now she held all the power, and watching him crumble under the weight of his own choices felt better than any physical intimacy they'd ever shared. "He's in a motel in Marietta," Marcus reported during one of their daily security briefings. "Lost the penthouse yesterday. Bank seized it. He's got nothing left except what he could carry." Natalie nodded slowly. Part of her felt satisfaction. Part of her felt pity. Mostly, she felt free. "Your father wants to know if you want him to stop," Marcus said quietly. "Or keep going. What else is there to take? His reputation, his ability to work in Georgia, his connections. Your father can make sure Derek Monroe never works in the automotive industry again, never gets a loan, never rebuilds. Complete destruction. Total erasure." Natalie looked at Marcus, this competent, protective man who'd been by her side since that first night, who checked on her daily, who made sure she felt safe, who looked at her like she was strong instead of broken. "What do you think I should do?" Marcus considered carefully. "I think you should do whatever helps you heal. If you need him gone completely, we make that happen. If you need him to hit bottom and rebuild somewhere far away, we make that happen. This is your call." The power of choice. The agency Derek had tried to steal from her. "Let my father finish what he started," Natalie decided. "Derek needs to understand what he did, what he lost, what happens when you hurt people who have more power than you realized." Marcus nodded. "I'll let Mr. Preston know." As Marcus turned to leave, Natalie caught his hand. "Thank you for everything, for being here, for making me feel safe." Something shifted in Marcus's expression, professional distance cracking slightly to show the man underneath. "Always," he said quietly, then left before the moment could become something more. But Natalie felt it. The pull, the awareness, the beginning of something that terrified and excited her in equal measure. She was still married to Derek, still technically bound to the man who'd beaten her, still pregnant with his child. But for the first time in months, she felt desire again. Not for revenge, not for power, for connection, for touch, for someone who saw her as strong instead of broken. Richard made one phone call from his office that evening, speaking quietly in Mandarin to contacts in China who had connections Derek Monroe would never escape. 20 minutes later, Derek's phone exploded with notifications. Every bank account frozen, every asset seized, every investor pulling out. "What did you do?" Derek whispered into his empty motel room, horror dawning as he watched his financial life disappear in real time. Richard smiled from 200 miles away. "Nothing yet. This was just the appetizer." The main course was coming, and Derek Monroe had no idea how bad things were about to get. Richard Preston didn't just ruin Derek Monroe, he erased him piece by piece while making sure Derek watched every moment of his disappearance. Week 1. The dealerships collapsed. Monroe Luxury Auto Group had 3 locations across Georgia: Atlanta, Savannah, and Macon. Derek had built his reputation on them, leveraged everything to keep them running despite mounting losses. Richard Preston dismantled them in 5 days. First, the financing disappeared. Banks pulled floor plan loans overnight, citing irregularities in Derek's financial reports. Without floor plan financing, dealerships can't stock inventory. Without inventory, they can't sell cars. Second, manufacturers revoked franchises. Luxury brands require certain standards: facility appearance, customer service metrics, financial stability. Derek's dealerships suddenly failed every audit simultaneously. Third, employees jumped ship. Richard's people made quiet calls to Derek's best salespeople, service managers, finance directors, offered them jobs at competing dealerships, better pay, better benefits, stability. Within 1 week, Monroe Luxury Auto Group was 3 empty buildings with for lease signs and Derek's name scrubbed from every door. From the safety of her father's Atlanta estate, Natalie watched Derek's world implode through news reports and financial statements. Each notification of another lost asset felt like watching a building demolished floor by floor, and she couldn't look away. She sat in the library, 4 months pregnant now, reading articles about Derek's business collapse on her tablet, while Marcus reviewed security reports across the room. Monroe Auto files for bankruptcy protection. Atlanta Business Journal. Luxury dealer faces fraud allegations. Georgia Financial Times. From Millionaire to Motel. The Fall of Derek Monroe. Atlanta Magazine. That last one included pictures. Derek looking haggard outside the Marietta Motel. His Bentley being repossessed. The Atlanta penthouse with a foreclosure notice on the door. Natalie should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt numb. "You okay?" Marcus asked, noticing her expression. "I don't know. Is it wrong that I feel bad for him?" "No. It means you're human. He's still suffering consequences of his own choices, but you're allowed to have complicated feelings about it." Marcus Chen had become a constant presence over the past 3 weeks. Officially, he was head of security, assigned to protect Natalie 24/7. Unofficially, he'd become something more: confidant, friend, the person who made her feel safe enough to sleep through the night. He was 32, former military, trained in 6 forms of combat and 4 languages. On paper, he was intimidating. In person, he was quietly competent, calm, and careful never to crowd her space or make her uncomfortable, which somehow made Natalie more aware of him. The way he moved through a room with contained strength. The way his suits fit across shoulders built for carrying weight. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention, like she was something precious he'd been tasked with protecting. "Your father wants to meet this afternoon," Marcus said, checking his phone. "Discuss next steps regarding Derek's situation." "What next steps?" "He's already lost everything." "Not quite." Marcus's expression darkened. "The Miami situation resolved. They received documentation of Derek's theft along with debt payment. They're not happy with him." Natalie's stomach clenched. "Meaning?" "Meaning Derek Monroe has bigger problems than bankruptcy now. He has dangerous people looking for him who don't care about legal consequences." Richard Preston had weaponized Derek's own criminal connections against him, turned predators into hunters with Derek as prey. "Will they kill him?" Marcus met her eyes. "Would that bother you?" Honest question. Deserving honest answer. "I don't want him dead," Natalie said slowly. "I want him gone. Different things." "Then we make sure he understands leaving Georgia, leaving you alone, is his only option for survival." Week 2. Derek's reputation shattered. Strategic media leaks painted him as fraudster, abuser, failed businessman. Articles quoted anonymous sources, detailing his violence toward Natalie, his financial crimes, his connections to Miami criminals. Derek tried fighting back, gave an interview to a local news station claiming he was the victim of a powerful family destroying him for divorcing their daughter. The interview aired once, then mysteriously disappeared from the station's website, YouTube, everywhere. Replaced with a statement. Previous segment retracted due to factual inaccuracies and legal concerns. Richard Preston's lawyers had handled it within 2 hours. Derek posted on social media. His accounts were suspended for violating community guidelines. He created new accounts. Those were suspended too. Every platform, every outlet, every method of telling his story. Blocked by legal threats, financial pressure, the systematic application of power Derek couldn't match. He was being erased. Week 3. Derek descended into desperation. Natalie saw it in the surveillance photos Marcus showed her. Derek had lost weight, stopped shaving, wore the same clothes multiple days. His eyes had a wild quality that suggested sleep deprivation and growing panic. "He tried contacting you," Marcus reported. "Called your old cell number 17 times. Sent emails to addresses he thought might reach you. We intercepted everything. What did they say? Apologies, begging, threats, the usual cycle of abuse, remorse, blame, promises to change, anger when ignored. Natalie nodded. She'd expected it, didn't want to hear it. There's something else, Marcus said carefully. He's been asking around about your father, trying to find information he can use. Leverage. Anything that might give him power back. He won't find anything. Actually, he might. Marcus pulled up a file on his tablet. Your father's first family. The kidnapping and murders 24 years ago. It's public record, just buried. If Derek digs deep enough, he'll try to use it against us. Natalie closed her eyes. Try to paint my father as dangerous. Me as unfit by association. Exactly. Can we stop him? We can try. But Mr. Preston thinks it's time for a more direct approach. A final confrontation that makes Derek understand he has no options left except the ones we give him. Natalie looked up sharply. What kind of confrontation? Marcus's expression was carefully neutral. The kind that requires your consent because it involves you being in the same room with Derek one more time. Fear and something else. Vindication, maybe, warred in Natalie's chest. Tell me what my father has planned. As Marcus explained the warehouse plan, Natalie felt her pulse quicken. Not with fear, with anticipation. Derek had beaten her in his penthouse, where she was powerless and alone. This time, she'd face him with an army at her back, and all the power in her hands. Is it wrong to feel attracted to someone new, while still healing from trauma? When does moving forward become acceptable? Share your thoughts on complicated timing below. Natalie noticed Marcus in ways she shouldn't. The way he checked every room before she entered. The way he positioned himself between her and any potential threat. The way his voice gentled when he spoke to her, but stayed steel when dealing with anyone else. One evening, after a particularly long day of legal meetings about the divorce, Natalie found Marcus in the estate gym. He was alone, working a heavy bag with controlled precision. Each punch measured, powerful, devastating. She should have left, should have given him privacy. Instead, she watched, muscles moving under his black t-shirt, sweat dampening his hair. The controlled violence of his movements that somehow felt protective rather than threatening. He noticed her, stopped, grabbed a towel. Sorry, I didn't know you were there. Don't apologize. I was just... What? Watching you? Wanting you? Noticing how safe you make me feel? Getting water. Marcus smiled slightly. Water fountains that way. He pointed in the opposite direction from where she stood. Caught. Natalie laughed despite herself. Okay, I was watching. You're good at that. 17 years of training. I should be. They stood in the gym, awareness stretching between them like a physical thing. Natalie was 4 months pregnant with another man's baby, still technically married, still healing from trauma. And she wanted Marcus Chen with an intensity that surprised her. I should go, she said, not moving. Probably, Marcus agreed, not moving either. Neither of them moved. Marcus! Her phone rang. Both of them jolted like waking from a trance. Natalie glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Marcus said immediately. But Natalie's curiosity won. She accepted the call. Heavy breathing. Background noise of traffic. Then Derek's voice, raw and desperate. You did this. You and your daddy think you've won. But if I'm going down, I'm taking something with me. The call ended. Marcus was beside her instantly, phone out, already calling her father. We need to move up the timeline, he said tersely. Derek just threatened Natalie directly. Richard's response was immediate. Tomorrow, warehouse in Marietta. I'll send him an invitation he can't refuse. 2 weeks into Derek's systematic destruction, Natalie received a video message on her phone. Derek, unshaven and wild-eyed, sitting in a motel room with a gun on the table beside. They lured Derek to a Marietta warehouse with promises from people he feared. But instead of Miami hitmen, he found his wife, her father, and the truth that would break him completely. The warehouse stretched vast and empty, industrial lights casting harsh shadows on concrete floors. Derek entered through the south door at exactly 11 p.m., shoulders hunched, gun visible in his waistband, a desperate man expecting violence. Instead, he found Natalie standing under a single overhead light, pregnant belly visible beneath her dress, flanked by men who radiated controlled danger. The setup had been perfect. Richard's people had sent Derek a text from a Miami number he recognized, one of his creditors, the dangerous kind who didn't accept excuses. Marietta Warehouse, 2847 Industrial Parkway, 11 p.m. Come alone. Bring what you owe or bring something we can use. Last chance. Derek had no money, nothing to trade. But he'd come anyway because the alternative was waiting for them to find him. He'd expected thugs, violence, maybe death. He hadn't expected Natalie. "Hello, Derek," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Derek stopped walking, hand moving to the gun at his waist. His eyes darted around the warehouse, counting the men with Natalie, looking for exits, calculating odds. "What is this?" His voice was raw, exhausted. He looked terrible, gaunt, unshaven, wearing clothes that hung loose on a frame that had lost too much weight too fast. "This is the end," Richard said, stepping from shadows into light. "The conversation we should have had 3 months ago before you decided violence was your answer." Derek's attention snapped to Richard. Recognition, fear, and rage all crossed his face at once. You destroyed me." "No, Mr. Monroe, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone saw it." Marcus stood slightly behind Natalie, his hand resting on her lower back, protective, grounding, claiming. The gesture wasn't lost on Derek. "You're sleeping with him?" Derek's voice rose, pointing at Marcus. "My wife is sleeping with my security guard?" "Ex-wife," Natalie corrected. "The divorce was finalized last week, and yes, I'm with Marcus, because he treats me like a human being instead of a punching bag." Derek's face twisted. "I made one mistake." "You made dozens of mistakes," Richard interrupted. "You married my daughter looking for money. You isolated her from friends. You verbally abused her for months. You questioned her faithfulness. You slapped her. You pushed her into a glass table while she was pregnant. Which of those do you consider the one mistake?" "I was under pressure. The Miami people were going to kill me. And instead of asking for help, instead of being honest, you took your fear out on a woman who loved you." Natalie's voice was ice. "I would have helped you, Derek. If you'd told me the truth, if you'd asked instead of hunting for money you thought I was hiding, I would have figured something out. But you didn't want help. You wanted a rescue, a rich wife who'd solve your problems without you having to admit you'd failed." "You lied to me," Derek shouted. "You married me pretending to be nobody when your father is a billionaire. I married you as myself. Natalie Hartley, veterinary assistant, woman who loved animals and wanted to be loved for who she was, not what I could provide. You're the one who married a fantasy, a broke girl you could control, manipulate, use." Derek pulled the gun, hands shaking, pointing it wildly between Natalie, Richard, and Marcus. "You took everything from me. My business, my money, my reputation, my wife. You took it all." Marcus moved faster than thought, positioning himself completely between Derek and Natalie. His own weapon appeared in his hand, smooth, practiced, deadly calm. "You want her?" Marcus said, his voice steel. "You go through me first." Derek's laugh was unhinged, broken. "You think you can stop me? You think any of you can stop me? I've got nothing left to lose. Nothing!" "That's where you're wrong," Richard said, pulling out his phone. He tapped the screen, then turned it to show Derek. "You've got your freedom left to lose, and you're about to." The phone displayed security footage, Derek breaking into the estate grounds, setting fire to the guest house, violating restraining orders, threatening Natalie in recorded messages. "I have documentation of every crime you've committed in the last month. Arson, stalking, attempted murder, terrorism threats. Enough to put you away for decades." Derek's gun wavered. You're bluffing. Try me. The warehouse doors burst open. Atlanta PD flooded in, weapons drawn, surrounding Derek completely. Derek Monroe, drop the weapon, an officer shouted. Drop it now. Derek looked around wildly, trapped, surrounded, out of options. His gun swung between targets, finger on the trigger. Marcus didn't wait for Derek to make a fatal choice. He moved with military precision, closing the distance, disarming Derek in 2 seconds flat, pinning him against concrete while police descended. Derek fought, screaming, cursing. You think this ends here? You have no idea what's coming. The Miami people, they'll never stop. They'll come for all of you. Actually, they won't, Richard said calmly, standing over Derek as officers cuffed him. While you were focused on my daughter, I was focused on your friends in Miami. Federal agents raided their operations an hour ago. Drug trafficking, money laundering, racketeering. They're facing RICO charges, every single one of them. The color drained from Derek's face. No, that's not... You couldn't. I could. I did. You're alone, Mr. Monroe. No money, no connections, no one coming to save you, just consequences for every choice you made. Officers lifted Derek from the floor, reading his rights as they prepared to transport him. Derek looked at Natalie one last time, really looked at her, seeing finally what he'd been too selfish to see before. A strong woman, a survivor, someone who'd outplayed him completely. You wanted family money, Derek? Natalie said, her voice steady, final. Here's the truth. I am the family money. I'm the hidden daughter, the secret heir, the girl my father kept anonymous to keep safe. You married an $18 billion fortune and didn't even know it. How does it feel to be the stupidest man in Georgia? Derek's face crumbled. I loved you. No. You loved what you thought I could give you. You never loved me. As they dragged him toward the doors, Derek started laughing. That broken, terrifying sound that had haunted Natalie's nightmares. You think this ends here? You have no idea what's coming. The Miami people have connections you can't touch. This isn't over. It's never over. It's over, Marcus said firmly, his hand finding Natalie's. You lose. The warehouse doors closed. Derek was gone. Natalie stood in the sudden silence, Marcus's arm around her shoulders, her father beside her, and felt something release in her chest. It was over. What would you say to someone who abused you if you had the chance to face them with all the power in your hands? Tell me in the comments. Marcus drove Natalie back to the estate, while Richard handled police statements and paperwork. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving Natalie shaky and exhausted. You were amazing in there, Marcus said quietly. Strong, powerful, everything he tried to take from you. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Back at the estate, Natalie collapsed on her bed, still fully dressed, too tired to move. Marcus started to leave, give her privacy, but she caught his hand. Stay. Please. He stayed. Lay beside her on top of the covers, fully clothed, just present. His warmth beside her, his breathing steady, his existence proof that safety was real. He's really gone, Natalie whispered. This time for good. This time for good? Marcus confirmed. So why don't I feel relieved? Because trauma doesn't end when the threat ends. It takes time to believe you're really safe, but you are. I promise you are. Natalie rolled to face him, 5 months pregnant now, belly between them. Will you help me believe it? Every day, for as long as you need. She kissed him, grateful, seeking comfort, needing connection to something good and real. Marcus kissed her back carefully, hands gentle on her face, her shoulders, nowhere demanding or aggressive. When they broke apart, Natalie tucked herself against his chest, his arms around her, and finally felt the terror begin to fade. Derek was arrested, the Miami connections dismantled, the threats neutralized. She was safe. They were safe. But as Natalie drifted toward sleep in Marcus's arms, Derek's final words echoed in her mind. You have no idea what's coming. She pushed the thought away. Derek was desperate, defeated, making empty threats. There was nothing left coming. Was there? Derek Monroe lost his money, his reputation, and his freedom. But from his jail cell, he launched one final desperate attack. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Natalie stood in a designer suit her father had insisted on, hand resting on her 6-month pregnant belly, and faced the world as herself, fully, publicly, for the first time in her 26 years. Ms. Preston, how do you feel about the charges against your ex-husband? Ms. Preston, is it true you're dating your bodyguard? Ms. Preston, will you testify? Marcus and Richard's security team formed a wall around her, pushing through the crowd toward the courthouse entrance. But Natalie paused at the top of the steps, turned to face the cameras. I'll make one statement, she said, her voice carrying over the chaos. Domestic violence thrives in silence and shame. I'm done being silent. Derek Monroe abused me physically, emotionally, and psychologically. He will be held accountable, and I will use my voice, my resources, and my story to help other survivors find the courage to speak up. Are you afraid of retaliation? No, I'm done being afraid. She walked inside. The cameras couldn't follow. The charges against Derek were extensive: assault and battery, attempted murder, arson, stalking, weapons violations, terroristic threats. His bail had been revoked after the warehouse arrest. He'd sit in jail until trial. But Derek's legal team, funded by sources unknown, had filed emergency motions, challenging evidence, demanding custody evaluations, claiming Natalie's relationship with Marcus proved she'd been unfaithful during the marriage, which somehow justified Derek's violence. The legal gymnastics were exhausting. They're trying to make you the villain, Patricia Chen, Richard's lawyer, explained during a pre-hearing conference. Classic abuser tactic. Paint themselves as the victim, you as the aggressor or seductress who drove them to violence. Will it work? Not with the evidence we have. But it'll be ugly. Are you prepared for that? Natalie looked at Marcus, who sat beside her, projecting calm confidence. Then at her father, who'd stood beside her through everything. I'm prepared. The custody hearing was brutal. Derek's lawyer, Mitchell Grant, painted Natalie as unstable, manipulative, a liar who'd hidden her identity from her husband and now was living with another man while pregnant. Your Honor, Ms. Preston claims to be a victim, but the evidence shows a woman who deceived her husband from day one, who kept massive secrets about her identity and wealth, who, within weeks of separation, began an intimate relationship with her father's employee. This is not the behavior of a traumatized victim. This is the behavior of someone who planned this entire scenario. That's insane, Natalie whispered to Patricia. I know. Let me handle it. Patricia stood, her voice sharp with controlled anger. Your Honor, Mr. Grant is engaging in classic victim blaming. Ms. Preston's choice to keep her father's identity private was for her protection, a protection that proved necessary when Mr. Monroe beat her. Her relationship with Mr. Chen began after the marriage was legally dissolved and after months of Mr. Chen providing professional security services. There is no impropriety, no deception, just a woman rebuilding her life after surviving violence. Judge Davidson reviewed documents, looking tired. Mr. Grant, do you have any evidence, actual evidence, not speculation, that Ms. Preston was unfaithful during her marriage? No, Your Honor, but the timeline suggests. Suggests isn't evidence. Next argument. Mitchell pivoted. Then we'd like to introduce evidence about Ms. Preston's father, Richard Preston, and his history of— We've been over this, Patricia interrupted. Mr. Preston was the victim of a horrific crime 24 years ago. That has no bearing on Ms. Preston's fitness as a parent. It speaks to the environment this child will be raised in. Violence, secrecy, paranoia. Or it speaks to a grandfather who protects his family fiercely and legally, Patricia countered. which is exactly what any loving parent would do. The hearing dragged on for hours. Medical records introduced showing Natalie's injuries, police reports documenting Derek's violence, character witnesses, Natalie's co-workers, friends, even her doctor, testifying to her stability and fitness as a parent. Derek sat in his orange jumpsuit, face blank, occasionally whispering to his lawyer. Finally, Judge Davidson spoke. "I'm granting Ms. Preston full custody with Mr. Monroe's visitation rights, pending psychiatric evaluation and completion of anger management programs. Given the documented violence, he will have supervised visitation only if and when the court determines he's no longer a threat." Relief flooded through Natalie. It wasn't termination of parental rights, not yet, but it was protection, safety, legal acknowledgement that Derek was dangerous. Then Mitchell stood with a smile that made Natalie's blood run cold. "Your Honor, we have new evidence regarding Ms. Preston's fitness as a mother. Evidence that changes everything." He placed a folder on the judge's bench. Natalie's hands clenched. Marcus's hand found hers under the table, squeezing reassurance. Judge Davidson opened the folder, read. His expression shifted, surprise, then displeasure. "Mr. Grant, this is the evidence you mentioned? Crime scene photos from a 24-year-old kidnapping and murder? It establishes a pattern of violence in Ms. Preston's family. It establishes that Mr. Preston's first wife and child were murdered by criminals. How that reflects on Ms. Preston's parenting ability, I cannot fathom." The judge's voice hardened. "This is exploitation of tragedy for legal advantage. I find it reprehensible. Your Honor, I'm denying your motion. Furthermore, I'm warning you that any further attempts to use Mr. Preston's trauma against his daughter will result in sanctions against you personally, Mr. Grant. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel fell. They'd won. But Natalie felt sick. Outside the courthouse, media had multiplied. The story of Richard Preston's murdered family had leaked, old crime scene photos on tabloid websites, speculation about Billionaire's dark past, conspiracy theories about whether Richard had been involved. "Don't read it," Marcus said firmly, seeing Natalie pull out her phone. "None of it is true. It's just people exploiting tragedy for clicks. They're making my father sound like a criminal." "Your father is a survivor. Anyone who knows him knows that." That night, Natalie found Richard in his study, staring at old photos. His first wife, his son, the family he'd lost. "Dad?" She knocked softly. He looked up, quickly wiping his eyes. "Hey, sweetheart. Heard the hearing went well." "It did, but I'm sorry about them using what happened to your family, using your pain against us." Richard set down the photo. "Come here." Natalie crossed the room. Richard pulled her into a hug. "I should have told you everything years ago," he said quietly. "About what happened to them. About why I hid you. You deserve to know the full story, not learn it from Derek's lawyers trying to weaponize it. Tell me now." So Richard did. Told her about his first wife, Jennifer, his son, Michael, the ordinary Tuesday when they'd been taken, the ransom he'd paid, everything he had at the time, the week of waiting, the phone call from police saying they'd found the bodies. "I broke after that," Richard admitted. "Completely broke. Didn't work for 6 months. Barely ate. Barely functioned. Your mother, your biological mother, she saved me. Reminded me I had you. That I needed to protect you. Keep you safe from anyone who might hurt you for my money. So you hid me. So I hid you. And I know that was hard. Know you grew up lonely, unable to be yourself. But sweetheart, I don't regret it. Because you're alive. You're here. And even though Derek hurt you, he couldn't have hurt you worse if he'd known about the money from the start." Natalie leaned against her father. "I don't regret it either. You kept me safe. That's what parents do." They sat in comfortable silence, two survivors of different traumas, understanding each other perfectly. How do you defend the people you love when their past is weaponized against you? When trauma becomes ammunition, Share your experience protecting your family below? Late that night, Marcus found Natalie on the estate balcony, staring at Atlanta's lights spread below. Couldn't sleep? Too much in my head. Marcus stood beside her, not touching, just present. Want to talk about it? I keep thinking about Derek's lawyer saying I planned everything, like I chose to be abused so I could— What? Get sympathy? That's insane. It's victim blaming, classic abuser tactic. I know, but what if people believe it? What if they think I'm lying? Then they're wrong. And anyone who knows you knows you're telling the truth. Natalie turned to face Marcus fully. 6 months pregnant, exhausted, emotionally raw. Do you ever doubt me? Ever wonder if I'm exaggerating or— Never. Marcus's voice was firm. Not once, not ever. I've seen the evidence. I've held you through nightmares. I've watched you fight through trauma to build something good from the ashes. I don't doubt you. I believe you. Completely. The certainty in his voice made Natalie's eyes fill. I don't deserve you. That's the trauma talking. You deserve everything good, including me, including safety, including happiness. He pulled her close carefully, mindful of her belly. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, reliable, real. Take me inside, she whispered. I need to feel something other than fear and anger. Marcus guided her back to her room, closing the door softly behind them. The estate was quiet. Richard asleep, security stationed, but giving them privacy. Are you sure? Marcus asked. Today was a lot. I'm sure. I need you. Need to remember what wanting someone feels like when they want you back. He kissed her then, soft at first, then deeper, hands moving through her hair, down her back. Respectful of her pregnant body, but showing exactly how much he wanted her. They undressed slowly, Marcus's hands reverent on her changed body. You're beautiful, he murmured, kissing her shoulder, her collarbone, the swell of her belly. I'm huge. You're growing life. That's incredible. They made love carefully, positions that worked with her pregnancy, Marcus letting Natalie control the pace and depth. His hands held her hips gently, supporting her, worshipping her. Tell me to stop if anything hurts, he whispered. Don't stop, she breathed. Please don't stop. After, lying tangled together, Marcus's hand rested on her belly, feeling the baby kick. She's active tonight, he said softly. She likes you, recognizes your voice. How can you tell? She always kicks more when you're around. Like she knows you're safe. Marcus kissed Natalie's temple. I'll keep you both safe, whatever it takes. I know. And she did. Absolutely. When is it okay to move on after trauma? Is there a timeline for healing before you're allowed to feel desire again? Comment your perspective below. 3 days later, the judge's final ruling came through. Derek Monroe's parental rights were being terminated. The evidence of violence, the ongoing threats, the complete lack of remorse, all added up to Derek being declared unfit as a parent. Natalie's baby would be legally hers alone. It's over, Patricia said, handing Natalie the documents. He can appeal, but given the evidence, no appeals court will overturn this. Natalie stared at the papers. Her daughter, not Derek's daughter, not even legally anymore, just hers, and Marcus's, if they chose to make it official. That night, at dinner with Richard and Marcus, Natalie announced her decision. I want to change her name, when she's born. Not Monroe, not Hartley, Preston. She's a Preston, part of this family. And Chen? Marcus asked carefully. If you want. No pressure. But I'd like to be her father, legally, if you'll let me. Natalie looked at this man who'd protected her, waited for her, loved her without demands or conditions. Yes, Preston Chen. She'll be both, part of all of us. Richard's eyes filled. She'll be lucky to have you both as parents. We're lucky to have her, Natalie corrected. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, Natalie received a call from Patricia. "Derek made bail," the lawyer said, her voice tight. "Someone posted it. Anonymous. We don't know who." Natalie's blood went cold. "How? He's facing attempted murder charges." His lawyer filed emergency motions claiming health concerns, flight risk assessment errors, legal maneuvering, and someone with deep pockets paid the bond. $2 million. Cash. Who would do that? Someone who wants him on the streets. Natalie sank into a chair, hand protectively over her belly. "What do we do?" "Increase security. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm filing for immediate rearrest, but it'll take time. In the meantime, assume Derek is dangerous and planning something." When Marcus heard the news, his face went dark with controlled fury. "Who would bail him out?" Natalie asked. "His Miami connections are in jail." "Someone we haven't identified yet. Someone with resources and a grudge." Marcus pulled out his phone, already calling Richard's security team. "We're going to full lockdown. No one in or out without verification." That night, Natalie paced her room, unable to sleep. 6 months pregnant, exhausted, and suddenly terrified all over again. Derek was out there, free, planning something. The nightmare wasn't over. Judge Davidson reviewed the evidence, looked at Derek in his orange jumpsuit, then at Natalie with her father and Marcus flanking her. "Mr. Monroe, your attempt to smear Ms. Preston by association is denied. Furthermore, given the evidence of domestic violence, I'm terminating your parental rights effective immediately." Derek lunged across the courtroom, screaming threats, tackled by bailiffs. That night, he made bail, posted by someone anonymous. "Who would bail him out?" Natalie asked Marcus, her voice tight with fear. His face darkened. "Someone who wants him on the streets." Richard's investigation would reveal the answer. Derek's remaining Miami contacts had found new funding. They were using Derek as a weapon, and Natalie was the target. Derek's lawyer couldn't prove she was a bad mother, so he tried to prove she was a bad person, digging into the secrets her father had buried for 2 decades. The courtroom felt like a gladiator arena. Every eye trained on Natalie, as Derek's lawyer projected photos of crime scenes from 24 years ago. Her father's first wife, her half-brother, the ransom demands, the bodies found. She forced herself to look, forced herself not to cry, forced herself to remember who the real monster in this room was. "Your Honor," Derek's attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Mitchell Grant, stood with theatrical precision. "We're here today because Ms. Preston claims she's a fit mother, but the evidence shows she was raised by a man with a documented history of violence and tragedy." Natalie's hands clenched under the table. Marcus sat directly behind her, his presence a steady anchor. "Objection?" Richard's lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, who'd handled billion-dollar deals, rose smoothly. "Mr. Preston was the victim of a horrific crime, not the perpetrator. This is character assassination, not relevant testimony." "Your Honor, it goes to the question of environment," Mitchell argued. "What kind of household did Ms. Preston grow up in? What values was she taught?" Her father's paranoia led him to hide his own daughter for 26 years. That speaks to judgment, mental stability. "My father protected me," Natalie said, her voice cutting through the courtroom. Judge Davidson looked at her over reading glasses. "Ms. Preston, please let your attorney—" "No." Natalie stood. Patricia touched her arm in warning, but Natalie shook her head. "I need to say this." The judge considered, then nodded. "Proceed." Natalie turned to face the courtroom. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but reporters packed every bench, notebooks ready. This would be front-page news by evening. "When I was 2 years old, my father's wife and 8-year-old son were kidnapped. He paid the ransom, $5 million. They killed them anyway, shot them and left their bodies in a warehouse in New Jersey." Her voice stayed steady despite the trembling in her hands. "My father did what any parent would do faced with unimaginable loss. He protected the child he had left. Me." She looked directly at Derek, sitting in his orange jumpsuit, flanked by guards. He raised me in privacy, gave me a normal childhood in Charleston, called me every Sunday, visited twice a year, made sure I had everything I needed while keeping me safe from people who might hurt me for his money. Natalie paused. The irony is that someone hurt me anyway. My husband. The man sitting right there who beat me while I was pregnant because I couldn't solve his financial problems. Ms. Preston, Mitchell tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. Natalie's voice hardened. You want to talk about fitness as a parent? Let's talk about Derek Monroe, a man who married me under false pretenses looking for money, who verbally abused me, who isolated me from friends, who questioned if my baby was even his, who slapped me and pushed me into a glass table while I was 3 months pregnant. That's the man trying to claim parental rights. The courtroom was silent. You could hear breathing, nothing else. My father isn't perfect, but he never hurt me, never made me feel worthless, never made me fear for my life. He gave me the tools to survive, to be strong, to call for help when I needed it. And when I called, he came. Natalie's eyes filled, but no tears fell. That's what a parent does. They protect. They show up. They choose their child's safety over their own pride. She sat down. Patricia squeezed her shoulder. Judge Davidson reviewed documents for what felt like hours. Finally, he looked up. Mr. Grant, your attempt to introduce Mr. Preston's trauma as evidence of Ms. Preston's unfitness is denied. The kidnapping and murder of his family 24 years ago has no bearing on Ms. Preston's ability to parent her child. Furthermore, the judge's voice hardened. Using a victim's tragedy to attack their character is reprehensible. Mitchell's face went red. Your Honor, I'm not finished. The evidence before this court shows clear documentation of domestic violence perpetrated by Mr. Monroe against Ms. Preston. Hospital records, photographic evidence, police reports. Ms. Preston's testimony is consistent and credible. Judge Davidson looked at Derek with unconcealed disgust. Mr. Monroe, given your history of violence, your financial crimes, and your complete lack of remorse, I'm terminating your parental rights effective immediately. The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushing for phones. Derek's lawyer arguing. Richard's subtle smile. And Derek? Derek lunged across the courtroom, screaming threats, hands reaching for Natalie, even with handcuffs on. You did this! You destroyed me! I'll kill you! I swear to God! I'll kill you! Bailiffs tackled him. Guards subdued him. But his voice carried over everything. You're dead! You and your bastard baby are dead! Marcus was already moving, positioning himself between Natalie and Derek, one hand on his concealed weapon. Richard pulled Natalie back. Patricia blocked the aisle. They dragged Derek out, still screaming. The courtroom buzzed with chaos. Judge Davidson banged his gavel. Order! We're adjourned! Ms. Preston, I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. Mr. Monroe is not to contact you, approach you, or communicate with you in any way for the rest of your life. Natalie nodded mutely. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Marcus and Richard's security team formed a wall around Natalie as they rushed to the car. Ms. Preston, how do you feel about the ruling? Will you press charges? What about your father's past? Is it true you're dating your bodyguard? That last question made Natalie stumble. Marcus's hand tightened on her elbow, steadying her. They made it to the car. Doors closed. Silence. That was intense, Richard said quietly. You okay, sweetheart? I don't know. Natalie stared at her hands. They were shaking. He threatened to kill me in front of a judge, in front of everyone. He's going back to jail, Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled anger. That outburst violated his bail. He'll be held without bond until sentencing. Good. But Natalie didn't feel relief. She felt exposed, raw, like her skin had been peeled back for the world to examine. How do you defend the people you love when their past is weaponized against you? When trauma becomes ammunition? Share your experience protecting your family below. That night, Marcus stayed in Natalie's room. Not for protection. though that was the official reason, for comfort, for the simple human need not to be alone after a day like today. They lay in her bed fully clothed, lights off, city glowing through windows. Natalie's head rested on Marcus's chest, his arm around her shoulders, their breathing synchronized. "Tell me something good," Natalie whispered. "Something that has nothing to do with courts, or Derek, or any of this." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "When I was deployed in Afghanistan, there was this dog, Stray, that hung around our base. Half-starved, covered in scars, mean as hell. Nobody could get near him. What happened? I spent 3 months earning his trust, left food out, sat nearby, but not too close, let him come to me on his terms." Marcus's voice was soft in the darkness. "Eventually, he let me pet him, then feed him by hand. By the time my tour ended, that dog slept at the foot of my bunk every night. Did you bring him home?" "Tried. Got all the paperwork done, paid for transport, everything. But the day before we were supposed to leave, he got hit by a truck outside the base. Died instantly." Natalie's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Me too. But I learned something from him. That trust isn't given, it's earned. That healing takes time. That sometimes the most broken things just need someone patient enough to wait while they put themselves back together." Natalie turned her head to look up at him. In the dim light from the windows, Marcus's face was all shadows and sharp angles. "Is that what you're doing with me? Waiting while I put myself back together?" "Yes." No hesitation, no apology. "What if I'm too broken?" Marcus's hand moved to her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You're not broken. You're healing. Different things." The eroticism wasn't in touching. It was in being seen, being understood, being treated like someone worth waiting for. Natalie shifted, raising herself on one elbow. 6 months pregnant now, belly round and obvious between them. But when she looked at Marcus, she didn't see judgment or pity. She saw want tempered by patience. Desire held in check by respect. "Thank you," she whispered, "for waiting. I'd wait forever if that's what you needed." She kissed him, soft, chaste, grateful. He kissed her back the same way, hands careful on her back, no demands or expectations. When they broke apart, Natalie settled back against his chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear, his warmth surrounding her, his presence making her feel safe enough to sleep. For the first time in months, she slept through the night without nightmares. But after we catch Derek, after the baby comes, after all of this is over, what happens to us? I want to be there when your daughter is born, not as your bodyguard. As someone who cares about you both, someone you chose to have there. What else? Marcus's hands slid higher, calves, knees, thighs, stopping respectfully before going too far. But the heat in his eyes said exactly how far he wanted to go. I want to know what it's like to touch you without anyone else's shadow between us. Not Derek, not duty, just you and me figuring out what this is. When did you know someone was safe to trust your heart to after it had been broken? What made you believe in love again? Tell me your story of finding safety. Natalie sat up slowly, not easy at 8 months pregnant, and shifted closer to him on the couch. I already know what this is, she said softly. Yeah? What is it? It's the first time I've wanted someone without fear, without wondering what they want from me. Without feeling like I have to be smaller or quieter or more convenient. She took his hand, placed it over her belly where the baby was kicking. You see all of me, pregnant, complicated, damaged, and you still look at me like I'm worth protecting, worth waiting for, worth choosing. Marcus's other hand moved to cup her face. You are, all of those things. Then stop waiting. Natalie? I'm 8 months pregnant with another man's baby and falling in love with you. I've never been more sure of anything. The confession hung between them. Marcus searched her face, looking for doubt or hesitation or fear. Finding none. You're sure? I'm sure. He kissed her carefully, aware of her belly, her comfort, her needs. But underneath the care was hunger, want, Months of restrained desire finally given permission. Natalie kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. The baby kicked between them, making them both laugh against each other's mouths. "She approves," Natalie said breathlessly. "Good. I'd hate to have to win over a newborn." They moved to Natalie's room with careful steps, Marcus checking that security was positioned, doors locked, windows secured, habits he couldn't break even now. Then they were alone. Door closed, just the two of them and the life growing between them. "I need you," Natalie said simply, sitting on the edge of the bed. Marcus knelt in front of her, hands on her thighs. "Are you sure? The baby—" "The doctor said it's fine, safe, normal." She cupped his face. "I need to feel something other than fear, Marcus. I need to remember what wanting someone feels like when they want you back. I need you." "Then let me love you the way you deserve." He undressed her slowly, each layer of clothing revealing skin he'd only imagined. Her changed body, swollen belly, curves that made his hands shake slightly with how much he wanted to touch her everywhere at once. But he took his time, kissing her shoulders, her collarbones, the swell of her breasts, lower to the stretched skin of her belly where no, not theirs, Derek's, where her baby grew. "You're beautiful," he whispered against her skin. "I'm 8 months pregnant and covered in stretch marks." "You're beautiful," he repeated firmly. "You're strong. You survived violence, and you're still here, still fighting, still choosing to trust me. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Natalie pulled him up to kiss him properly. "Stop talking and come here." They made love carefully, Marcus hyper-aware of her comfort, her needs, what positions worked with her pregnant body. She directed him, telling him what felt good, what hurt, what she needed. It was tender but passionate, slow but intense. The opposite of everything she'd experienced with Derek, where sex was about power and control and taking. This was about giving, sharing, choosing each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Marcus's hand resting on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "She's active tonight," he murmured. "She likes you. How can you tell? She only kicks this much when you're around, like she knows you're safe." Marcus kissed Natalie's temple. "I'll keep you both safe, whatever it takes." "I know." And she did. Absolutely. They fell asleep like that, intertwined, peaceful, together. The alarms woke them at 4 a.m. "Perimeter breach, east side." Marcus's radio crackled. He was up instantly, dressed, armed, alert. Natalie struggled out of bed, heart pounding. "What's happening?" "Stay here, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or your father." "Marcus!" He kissed her hard and fast. "I'll come back, I promise." He was gone. Natalie locked the door, then moved to the window. Guards running across the lawn, lights flooding the grounds, and flames, bright orange flames consuming the guest house where Marcus should have been sleeping. If he'd been there, if he hadn't been with her. Derek had tried to burn him alive. The realization hit like ice water. Derek wasn't trying to scare her anymore. He was trying to kill. Natalie woke to alarms blaring through the estate at 4 a.m., Marcus already up and armed, his voice sharp into radio. "Perimeter breach, east side." Through the window, she saw flames. Derek had set fire to the guest house where Marcus was supposed to be sleeping. If he'd been alone, if he hadn't been with her, the realization hit like ice water. Derek wasn't trying to scare her anymore. He was trying to kill. They couldn't live in fear forever, so Richard Preston did what he did best. He took control of the game and changed the rules. The charity gala glittered with Atlanta's elite, champagne flowing, orchestra playing, Natalie in a custom gown that accommodated her 9-month belly. She circulated, smiling, laughing, playing her part perfectly, while Marcus shadowed her in a tuxedo, and 24 undercover agents positioned throughout the ballroom waited for Derek to make his move. Natalie was 4 days past her due date. Her doctor had cleared her to attend the event with strict instructions. First sign of labor, go directly to the hospital. No exceptions. "How are you feeling?" Richard asked during a quiet moment near the buffet tables. He wore his public face. Charming, relaxed, the philanthropist accepting an award. But his eyes never stopped scanning the room. "Like a whale in designer clothing," Natalie said, "and terrified." "We can call this off. Say the word, and we leave right now." "No, we end this tonight." Marcus appeared at her elbow, handing her sparkling water in a champagne flute. "Look like you're celebrating," he murmured. 3 news cameras just panned this direction. Natalie raised the glass, smiled, played her role. The event was designed to draw Derek out, maximum publicity, Natalie visible. Security that looked light, but was actually massive. Every entrance monitored, every guest vetted, every staff member verified. Somewhere in the city, Derek was watching. News coverage had been promoting the event for a week. Billionaire Richard Preston accepting humanitarian award, his daughter Natalie attending. Her first major public appearance since the domestic violence trial. The bait was set. The trap was ready. They just had to wait. Before the event, Marcus had pulled Natalie aside in her room at the estate. "If anything goes wrong tonight, nothing will go wrong. But if it does, I need you to run. Don't be brave. Don't try to stay. You run and you protect that baby. Promise me." Natalie had cupped his face with both hands. "I promise, but you have to promise me something too." "Anything. Promise you'll come back to me. That you won't do something stupid and heroic that gets you killed. Because I can't lose you." Her voice cracked. "I just found you. I can't lose you already." Marcus had kissed her then. Desperate, deep, full of everything they hadn't said yet. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I know the timing is terrible, and your life is complicated, and I'm technically still your employee. But I love you, and I need you to know that before tonight." Tears had slipped down Natalie's cheeks. "I love you too, so come back to me." "Always." Now, circulating through the gala, Natalie held on to that promise. Richard gave his speech accepting the award. Talked about medical research, pharmaceutical innovations, the importance of accessible healthcare. His voice never wavered despite knowing tonight might end in violence. Natalie clapped with everyone else, one hand protectively on her belly. The baby had been quiet all evening, unusually so. Either she sensed her mother's tension, or she was conserving energy for what was coming. 9 p.m. Nothing. 10 p.m. Still nothing. At 10:47 p.m., Marcus's radio crackled with a voice too low for Natalie to hear. His body went tense. He touched his earpiece, listening, then leaned close to Natalie. "Derek's here. Security spotted him near the service entrance. Stay calm, stay with your father. I'll be right back." "No, Marcus." But he was already moving, melting into the crowd with the ease of someone trained for this. Richard appeared at Natalie's side immediately. "He's inside?" "Close." Marcus went to... The lights went out. Complete darkness. The ballroom erupted in confusion. Guests calling out. Staff trying to maintain calm. Security shouting instructions. Then the emergency lights kicked in. Dim red glow, casting everything in shadows. And Derek Monroe burst through the service entrance, gun raised, heading straight for Natalie. Marcus stepped between them without hesitation. "You want her?" he said calmly, hand on his own weapon. "You go through me first." Derek's laugh was unhinged, wild, the sound of someone who'd lost everything, including sanity. "You think you can stop me?" Spit flew from his mouth. He looked gaunt, crazed, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "You took her from me, turned her against me, made her think she was worth something." "She is worth something," Marcus said evenly. "She's worth more than you'll ever understand." "She's mine, my wife, my property." "She was never yours. You never owned her. You just convinced yourself you did." Derek swung the gun between Marcus, Natalie, and Richard. Guests were screaming, running for exits. Security closing in, but not fast enough. Everything happening in slow motion. Natalie stepped forward. Marcus tried to block her, but she moved around him. "Derek," she said, her voice cutting through chaos. "Look at me." Her ex-husband's wild eyes locked on her face. "You're right about one thing. I'm not yours anymore. But I never was. You married a version of me you invented. Helpless, broke, desperate. That person never existed." "Shut up! I'm the daughter of an $18 billion empire. I'm carrying a child who will never know your name. I survived your violence, and I'm standing here stronger than you'll ever be. You lost, Derek. You lost the moment you decided to hurt me instead of love me." Derek's face twisted. He raised the gun, pointing it directly at Natalie's chest. "Then we both lose." Marcus moved. Fast. Faster than should have been possible. He tackled Derek before the gun fired, both men hitting the ground hard. The weapons skidded across the floor. Security descended, 6 agents pinning Derek while he screamed and fought and cursed. Red laser sights dotted Derek's chest from a dozen directions. Undercover agents revealing themselves, surrounding him completely. Richard's voice came from the balcony above, amplified by a microphone. "It's over, Mr. Monroe. You lose." Derek stopped fighting, lay on the floor, surrounded, defeated. He started laughing, that broken, terrible sound that had haunted Natalie's nightmares. "You think this ends here?" He turned his head to look at Natalie. "You think you're safe now? They'll never stop coming. The Miami people, the creditors, everyone I owe. They know about you now. They know you're the reason I went down. This never ends, Natalie. Never." "Actually, it does," Richard said, descending the stairs calmly. "You see, Mr. Monroe, while you were focused on my daughter, I was focused on your friends in Miami. They've been arrested tonight. Simultaneous raids on their operations, drug trafficking, money laundering, racketeering. The FBI has been building a case for years. I just gave them the final pieces they needed." Derek's face went slack with horror. "So no," Richard continued, "no one is coming for my daughter, because everyone who might have wanted to is going to prison. Just like you." Atlanta PD burst through the doors. Real police, not undercover agents. They lifted Derek from the floor, read him his rights, cuffed him properly. Have you ever had to face your abuser one final time? That moment of standing strong when everything in you wanted to run? Share your moment of courage below. As they led Derek away, he looked at Natalie one last time. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently. But before Natalie could respond, pain shot through her belly, sharp, intense, unmistakable. "Marcus," she whispered, face going pale. "The baby! Something's wrong!" Her water broke right there on the ballroom floor, blood pooling with it. Too much blood. Marcus caught her as she collapsed, his voice sharp with fear, cutting through everything else. "I need an ambulance now!" The last thing Natalie heard before darkness took her was Marcus's voice, steady, commanding, refusing to let her go. "Stay with me, Natalie. Stay with me. I've got you. I've got you." She went into labor on a ballroom floor while her attacker was arrested 15 feet away, a daughter born from violence but delivered into love. The hospital room glowed soft gold in morning light, machines beeping steady rhythms of life. Natalie held her daughter, 7 pounds, perfect, with her mother's eyes, while Marcus sat beside her, his finger clutched in the baby's tiny fist, looking at them both like they hung the moon. The delivery had been rough, placental abruption caused by stress, the baby's life and Natalie's both in danger for a terrifying hour. Emergency C-section, blood transfusions, Marcus pacing the waiting room while surgeons worked. But in the end, both had survived. The baby, not Derek's daughter, never Derek's daughter, just hers, was healthy and beautiful and completely unaware that she'd been born on the worst and best night of her mother's life. "She needs a name," Marcus said softly, watching the baby's tiny fingers grip his. Lily, Natalie said without hesitation. Lily Grace Preston. Not Monroe? Never Monroe. She's mine. And my father's. And… Natalie looked at Marcus, her heart doing that complicated thing it did whenever she saw him. And yours, if you want her to be. Marcus's eyes filled. You mean that? I mean it. You've been more of a father to her already than Derek ever would have been. You chose us. Both of us. Even when we came as a package deal with danger and trauma and complexity. Easiest choice I ever made. Richard appeared in the doorway, still in his tuxedo from the gala, looking exhausted and relieved in equal measure. How are my girls? Perfect, Natalie said, holding the baby closer. Dad, meet Lily Grace. Lily, meet your grandfather. Richard crossed the room carefully, like approaching something sacred. He looked down at his granddaughter, this tiny life that represented hope and future and family continuing, despite everything that had tried to break them. Hello, sweetheart, he whispered. I'm your Grandpa Richard, and I promise, you'll never have to hide who you are. You'll grow up safe, loved, and free. Natalie watched her father hold her daughter, watched Marcus sitting protectively close, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next 3 days were a blur of visitors, flowers, news coverage, and legal proceedings. Derek Monroe was formally charged. Attempted kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, stalking, violating restraining orders. His bail was revoked. He'd sit in jail until trial, then almost certainly prison for decades. Natalie signed divorce papers from her hospital bed. The marriage was dissolved. She was free. The Miami creditors Derek had warned her about were indeed arrested. Richard's FBI contacts had coordinated perfectly timed raids based on evidence Richard had been gathering for months. Every threat, every danger, eliminated in one night. How did you do it? Natalie asked her father during a quiet visit. How did you dismantle everything so completely? By being smarter, richer, and more patient than everyone who underestimated me, Richard said simply, and by caring more about protecting you than about anything else in this world. On day 3, Marcus knocked on Natalie's hospital room door, holding flowers and looking nervous in a way she'd never seen him. Can we talk? Always. He sat beside the bed, setting the flowers aside, taking her hand carefully around the IV line. I know the timing is crazy, he started. I know you just had a baby and finalized a divorce, and your life is complicated. But Natalie, I love you. I love Lily. And I want to spend my life keeping you both safe and happy. Natalie's heart started racing. Marcus, I'm not done. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a simple ring, platinum band with 3 small diamonds. Will you marry me? Not because you need protection, not because I work for your father, but because we choose each other. Because I want to be your partner, your equal, the person you build a life with. Tears slid down Natalie's cheeks. Yes. Yes. Absolutely yes. Yes to you, yes to us, yes to building something real and healthy and good. Marcus slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her carefully, aware of her recovery, her C-section incision, her exhaustion. I'm going to be a good father to her, he promised. To Lily, I know she's not mine biologically, but she's ours, Natalie corrected. Biology doesn't make family. Choice does. Love does. Showing up does. And you've shown up every single day since the moment we met. When did you know someone loved you not despite your complicated life, but including all of it? When did someone choose you completely? Share that moment below. 6 weeks later, Natalie stood in front of a judge again, but this time to change Lily's birth certificate. Father's name, Marcus Chen. Derek had lost his parental rights. Natalie had full custody. And while Derek's DNA might be in Lily's blood, Marcus would be her father in every way that mattered. Are you sure about this? The judge asked, reviewing the paperwork. Once it's filed, Mr. Monroe can't contest it. His rights are terminated. I'm sure, Natalie said firmly, Marcus standing beside her with his hand on her back. The judge signed. Filed. Done. Lily Grace Preston had a father who chose her. The media coverage was intense for months. Secret heiress, violent ex-husband, dramatic gala confrontation, emergency birth. It was the kind of story that sold newspapers and drove clicks. But eventually, public attention shifted to newer scandals. Life normalized, quieted. Natalie moved out of her father's estate into a house Marcus found, modern but warm, with a yard for Lily, an office where Natalie could work, a home gym where Marcus could maintain training. Their home, their family, their life. Richard visited often, doted on Lily, spoiled his granddaughter outrageously while pretending he wasn't. And Natalie began planning something that had been growing in her mind since the courthouse testimony. A foundation for domestic violence survivors, using her story, her father's resources, her hard-won freedom to help others find theirs. 6 months after Lily's birth, Natalie stood in Marcus's arms in their bedroom, moonlight streaming through windows, and told him the news. "I'm pregnant." Marcus's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? 8 weeks. I just got confirmation today." This time, joy. This time, no fear or violence or predatory marriage overshadowing everything. This time, a baby created from love and choice and partnership. Marcus kissed her deeply, hands settling on her still flat belly with reverence. "Are you happy?" he asked against her lips. "So happy. Marcus, I'm so happy I don't know how to contain it." They made love slowly, carefully, celebrating the life growing between them and the life they'd built together. Afterward, lying tangled together, Marcus traced patterns on her shoulder. "What do you want, boy or girl?" "Healthy," Natalie said immediately. "That's all that matters." "Fair, but if you had to pick?" "A boy, so Lily has a little brother to protect." "Or a girl, so they can team up against us." Natalie laughed. "Either way, they're growing up safe, loved, free. Like you should have always been. Like I am now." When did you know someone loved you not despite your complicated life, but including all of it? When did someone choose you completely? Share that moment below. As they packed to outside, news vans had circled, reporters gathering. The secret heiress, her bodyguard, and her baby, a story everyone wanted to tell. But Natalie had her own story to write now, and she was just getting started. 5 years ago, she couldn't tell anyone her name. Today, she signs it to foundation grants changing lives. Natalie Preston Chen, survivor, heiress, and architect of her own destiny. The foundation building stood in downtown Atlanta, modern glass and steel with the Lily Foundation for Survivors etched above the entrance. Inside, Natalie addressed a room full of women who'd escaped situations like hers, sharing her story, offering resources, providing the lifeline she'd once needed. 2 years had passed since that night at the gala. 2 years since Derek Monroe had tried to destroy her one final time and failed. 2 years since Lily was born on a ballroom floor while her abuser was dragged away in handcuffs. 2 years of healing, building, becoming. "I stood where you're standing," Natalie told the room of survivors. "Scared, ashamed, convinced I'd made terrible choices that led to my abuse, convinced I deserved what happened." 20 women listened, some nodded, some cried, all understood. But here's what I learned. Abuse is never the victim's fault. Not when you married him, not when you stayed, not when you believed his apologies. The only person responsible for violence is the person who chooses violence. Natalie wore a simple dress, her wedding ring from Marcus catching light when she gestured. At 28, she looked different than the frightened girl who'd crawled across broken glass 3 years ago. Stronger, confident, free. The Lily Foundation offers emergency housing, legal assistance, counseling, job training, and childcare. We help you leave. We help you rebuild. We help you remember who you were before someone tried to break you. After the presentation, women approached her one by one, thanked her, shared their stories, asked for help. Natalie listened to each one, took notes, connected them with resources. This was her purpose now, turning her trauma into something that saved others. The women in the room watched this interaction. Healthy family, loving father, child who felt safe enough to be loud and joyful. Proof that there was life after violence, happiness after trauma. "This is my daughter, Lily," Natalie told the room. "She's the reason I fight. She deserves to grow up in a world where women aren't afraid of the men they love, where children don't have to hide, where safety is normal, not rare." Lily waved at everyone. Several women waved back, smiling through tears. After the event ended, Natalie, Marcus, and Lily walked to the parking garage. Marcus carried Lily, his other hand holding Natalie's, their fingers intertwined naturally. "Good turnout today," Marcus said. 20 women, the foundation's growing. Thanks to Dad's funding and your security protocols. Half these women are hiding from dangerous men. Without proper safety measures, they'd be too scared to come. I know, that's why we do this. They reached the car, a practical SUV. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth or attracted attention. Marcus buckled Lily into her car seat while Natalie slid into the passenger side. "Dad?" Natalie said softly. "We have news." Richard looked up, immediately alert. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. I'm pregnant. You're going to have a grandson in 6 months." Richard's face transformed. Joy, relief, pride, all at once. He carefully shifted Lily on his lap so he could stand and hug Natalie. "A grandson," he repeated, voice thick. "Sweetheart, that's wonderful." "His name will be Richard," Marcus added. "Richard Marcus Chen, if that's okay with you." Richard's eyes filled. He pulled Marcus into the hug too, the three of them standing together while Lily slept obliviously. "I'm honored," Richard managed. "Truly honored." Later that night, after Lily was asleep in her room at home, Natalie and Marcus lay together in their bedroom. "Are you nervous?" Marcus asked. "About the pregnancy? The birth?" "A little. Last time was traumatic. But this time is different. This baby was created from love, wanted, planned. That changes everything." Marcus's hands traced patterns on her bare skin, shoulder to hip, slow and reverent. "You're incredible. You know that?" "You might be biased." "Definitely biased. Also definitely right." They made love slowly, familiar now, practiced, knowing exactly what the other needed. But underneath the familiarity was still wonder, still gratitude that they'd found each other amid all the chaos and violence. Marcus touched her like she was treasured, because to him, she was. He kissed every inch of her skin, whispering promises against her body. Promises of safety, love, partnership, future. When he moved inside her, it was with the kind of reverence reserved for sacred things. Not because she was fragile, she'd proven she wasn't, but because she'd survived brutality and still chose gentleness, still chose trust, still chose him. "I love you," he breathed against her neck as they moved together. "I love you," she answered, holding him closer, feeling complete in ways she hadn't known were possible. After, wrapped in sheets and each other, Natalie traced the tattoo on Marcus's chest, her name and Lily's name over his heart. He'd gotten it 6 months after they married, permanent proof of his commitment. "When the baby's born, are you going to add his name?" she asked. "Already have the appointment scheduled." Natalie smiled. "You're such a dad." "Damn right I am." They fell asleep, tangled together, peaceful, safe, loved. What would you tell your younger self if you could whisper back through time? What advice would you give someone still trapped in their nightmare? Comment below. Your words might save someone. 3 months later, Natalie stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., testifying before Congress about domestic violence legislation. She was visibly pregnant now, 6 months, belly round and obvious. But she stood tall, confident, using her story to push for legal changes that would protect other women. "My ex-husband beat me while I was pregnant," she told the room of legislators. He isolated me from friends. He threatened to kill me. And when I finally got a restraining order, he violated it 17 times before being arrested. The system failed me at every turn. It fails thousands of women every day. She outlined the foundation's proposals: mandatory GPS monitoring for abusers with restraining orders, emergency housing funding, faster processing of protection orders, harsher penalties for violations. Marcus watched from the gallery, Lily on his lap, Richard beside them, their family supporting her as she fought for others. The testimony made national news. Secret heiress turned advocate, the headlines read. Natalie's face on magazine covers, talk show appearances, podcast interviews. She used every platform to talk about domestic violence, survival, the importance of resources and support. Used her wealth, her name, her story to make change. Derek Monroe remained in prison. 25 years, no possibility of parole for 15. He'd written letters, hundreds of them, alternating between apologies and threats. Natalie never read them. Marcus intercepted everyone, filed them with her legal team, protected her from Derek's final attempts to maintain control. Derek's Miami connections were similarly imprisoned, their operations dismantled by federal prosecutors using evidence Richard had provided. The threat was over. Permanently. 6 months after testifying in D.C., Natalie gave birth to Richard Marcus Chen. 8 pounds, healthy lungs, his father's eyes. The delivery was peaceful this time, no emergencies, Marcus holding her hand throughout, Lily meeting her baby brother with excited wonder. He's so tiny, Lily said, peering into the hospital bassinet. Can we keep him? Forever, Natalie promised. He's ours. Richard held his grandson, with tears streaming down his face. This second chance at family, this proof that trauma doesn't have to be an ending, that love can grow from ashes. Thank you, he whispered to Natalie, for surviving, for fighting, for giving me this. Thank you for teaching me I was worth protecting. 2 years later, Natalie stood in the foundation building, now expanded to 3 floors, with satellite offices in 5 cities. The Lily Foundation had helped over 2,000 women escape abuse, rebuild lives, find safety. She signed grant approvals, reviewed new programs, planned expansion into more states. Her signature, Natalie Preston Chen, on documents that changed lives. Mrs. Chen? Her assistant appeared in the doorway. The mayor's office called. They want you to speak at the Women's Safety Conference next month. Add it to the schedule. Also, your husband called. Said he's picking up both kids from daycare and making dinner. You're supposed to come home on time for once. Natalie laughed. Tell him I'll try. Driving home that evening. Through Atlanta traffic and fading sunlight, Natalie thought about the journey. From that charity auction where a predator noticed her, through violence and fear and nearly dying, to this, family, purpose, happiness earned through surviving. She pulled into their driveway. Inside, she could hear chaos. Lily playing, baby Richard crying, Marcus singing off-key while cooking something that smelled amazing. Normal, beautiful, hers. Natalie walked through the door to find Marcus at the stove with Richard strapped to his chest in a baby carrier, while Lily played with blocks on the kitchen floor. Mama's home! Lily abandoned the blocks to run and hug Natalie's legs. I'm home, Natalie agreed, scooping Lily up, kissing her daughter's forehead, then crossing to kiss Marcus and the baby. How was work? Marcus asked, stirring pasta with one hand while supporting the baby with the other. Multitasking dad perfection. Productive. The anniversary gala, raising money for expansion, celebrating 5 years of helping survivors rebuild lives. Natalie gave the keynote speech, Marcus beside her on stage, their children in the audience with Richard. 5 years ago, I stood in this room terrified, Natalie told the crowd of donors and supporters. My ex-husband had tried to kill me. I'd gone into labor on this floor. I didn't know if my baby or I would survive the night. The room was silent. Tonight, I stand here as proof that survival is possible, that trauma doesn't define you, that the worst moments of your life can become the foundation for your greatest purpose. She outlined the foundation's accomplishments. 2,000 women helped, 12 shelters opened, legislation passed in 3 states, lives saved and rebuilt. We named this foundation after my daughter, Lily, because she represents hope, new beginnings, life that blooms even after violence tries to destroy it. The crowd rose in standing ovation. Natalie looked at Marcus, then at her father, holding both her children, and felt overwhelming gratitude. She'd survived. They'd all survived. And they'd built something that meant other women could survive too. After the gala, as they drove home, Lily asleep in her car seat and Richard drowsy in his, Marcus reached for Natalie's hand. "Proud of you," he said simply. "Proud of us." Fair. At home, they carried sleeping children to beds, tucked them in, stood in the doorway of each room just watching them breathe. "We made this," Natalie whispered. "This family, this life, this safety. We made it from nothing." "From everything," Marcus corrected. "From your strength, your refusal to stay broken, your choice to fight." In their bedroom, undressing for bed, Natalie caught sight of herself in the mirror. Scars from the C-section, stretch marks from 2 pregnancies, body that had survived violence and childbirth and carried life. "Beautiful," Marcus said, coming up behind her. Meeting her eyes in the reflection. "I'm a mess." "You're a survivor. You're a mother. You're strong enough to build something from ashes. That's the most beautiful thing in the world." He turned her to face him, kissed her deeply, walked her backward toward their bed. They made love one last time in this story. Tender, passionate, celebrating everything they'd survived and everything they'd built. Equals. Partners. Chosen family. Afterward, lying in darkness, Natalie thought about that veterinary assistant who'd gone to a charity auction in a borrowed dress, who'd caught the eye of a millionaire and thought she'd found love. She hadn't found love that night. She'd found a predator. But surviving that predator had led her here, to Marcus, to her children, to purpose and healing and happiness she'd earned through refusing to quit. "Thank you," she whispered to Marcus. "For what?" "For waiting. For seeing me when I was broken. For choosing us every single day. Thank you for surviving. For fighting. For letting me love you." They fell asleep, holding each other. Proof that trauma doesn't have to be an ending. It can be a beginning. What would you tell your younger self if you could whisper back through time? What advice would you give someone still trapped in their nightmare? Comment below. Your words might save someone. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories of survival, strength, and justice. Tell me in the comments, what part of Natalie's journey resonated most with you? Was it her courage? Her father's protection? Marcus's love? Let me know, and remember, you're never as powerless as someone wants you to believe. Your secret strength might be exactly what saves you. Until next time, this is your reminder that every survivor's story deserves to be told.